Chapter 349. Yes, we are going to Area 13, Qin Haodong said. His English was also good, so he could communicate normally. Oh my god, why are you going to that damn place? The black driver said this, but he had already started the car, left the airport, and headed for the road. Hu Shaoxian asked, "What's wrong with Area 13? The black driver said, "The security in that place is really bad. I can only take you to the periphery. I don't dare to go inside. Otherwise, my car will be ruined. It will be smashed by those lawless guys. And beautiful women like you should not go there. If there is no bodyguard, I guarantee that you will be taken away in 5 seconds. Hu Shaoxian pointed to Qin Haodong and said with a smile, "He is my bodyguard." The black driver glanced at Qin Haodong's thin body and said, No, he can't do it at all. You don't know how strong and violent those guys are. A bodyguard like him can't protect you. On the contrary, he will be taken away by some people with special hobbies." Hearing the driver's words, Hu Shaoxian giggled. Qin Haodong said helplessly, "Isn't this the capital of M country? Why is the security so bad?" The black driver said, "This is indeed the capital of M country. The security in other places is also very good, but that damn place in Area 13 is not good. Although it is a district, it is dozens of kilometers away from the urban area. Area 13 is a restricted area for the police. As long as no one dies, the police will not go there. Even if someone dies, the police will only go to collect the body, because it is so messy there. The only way to deal with those guys is to send troops." After a pause, he continued, "You're not from here, right? I really don't know who sent you there. It's no different from sending you to your death. Listen to me, don't go to that place, or the consequences will be unimaginable." Seeing that the driver was kind-hearted, Qin Haodong said, "In fact, we are not going to Area 13. We are going to a place 20 kilometers north of it." The coordinates were set by Chi Weiner. Davis had been active here recently, so it should be the location of their nest. "Oh my god, are you talking about the Devil's Forest?" The driver seemed to have heard something terrible. He stepped on the brake and said to the two of them, "I can send you to the periphery of Area 13, but I will not go to a place like the Devil's Forest." Hu Shaoxian asked in surprise, "Why? Wasn't that just a forest? Is it scarier than District 13? The black driver said, "Devil's Forest. Do you know why it's called Devil's Forest? Just because there are demons there, there's still hope to come out alive after entering Area 13, but not in the Demon Forest. It's been a long time since anyone came out alive from there." Of course, Qin Haodong was not afraid of the so-called devil. He said, "It doesn't matter. You can send us to the periphery of the 13th district. We will find a way to get there by ourselves." Are you guys crazy? Why did he have to go to that damned place? Let me tell you, you absolutely cannot go to that place. The driver still wanted to dissuade him, but Qin Haodong took out a few bills and slapped them in front of him, saying, "We know what we're doing. Take us there, and these bills are yours. All right then, good luck." Seeing that he couldn't stop them, the driver looked at them with pity and started the car again. The taxi left the airport and drove quickly along the highway in the direction of Area 13. The driver was very talkative. He chatted with the two along the way, introducing various legends related to Area 13 and the Devil's Forest, trying to persuade them to change their minds. Qin Haodong examined the warm-hearted driver several times and did not find any problems with him. But for some reason, there was a kind of uneasiness slowly growing in his heart, and this feeling was getting stronger and stronger. After a while, his scalp was numb, and the powerful spirit made him feel extremely uneasy. He quickly shouted to Hu Shaoxian, "It's dangerous, get out of the car." With that, he kicked the door open and jumped out. Although Hu Shaoxian did not know why, she also kicked the door on the other side out of complete trust in Qin Haodong and jumped out. Oh my god, my car. The black driver was going crazy. They had been chatting well. Why did they suddenly kick the door of his car? What were they doing? Moreover, the speed of the car was extremely fast. How could he survive if he jumped out at this speed? Before he could react, there was a loud bang and a cloud of black smoke rose from the road. The Buick taxi was like a weightless leaf in front of the huge wave of air. It was thrown high and then turned into countless pieces. The poor black driver was buried with the taxi before he could figure out what was going on. Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian looked at the scene of the explosion together with a serious expression. Is it the driver's problem? Hu Shaoxian asked. No, the driver is fine. He didn't know there was a bomb in front of him. Qin Haodong said, I guess we were targeted as soon as we got off the plane, and then a bomb was installed on this road. Although they had guessed that this trip to M country would not be peaceful, they did not expect Davis to come so quickly, making the poor driver a scapegoat. What should we do now? Hu Shaoxian asked. Find another car, of course, Qin Haodong said as he looked around. Qin Haodong looked around, but this was not Huaxia. The population density was not large, and there were very few vehicles coming and going. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, only 2 cars passed by, and they all retreated after seeing the scene of the explosion. Hu Shaoxian said, It seems that we have to walk over. As soon as she finished speaking, a siren sounded. 2 police cars sped over from a distance. It seemed that someone had called the police. The 2 police cars stopped not far from them. 4 policemen jumped out of the cars, pulled out their guns and shouted, Don't move. Raise your hands. Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian both raised their hands cooperatively. The 2 police cars stopped not far from them. A bearded policeman came forward and asked, Don't move. Raise your hands. The 2 of them were very cooperative. A bearded policeman stepped forward and asked, What's going on here? Qin Haodong said, We are tourists from Huaxia. We took a taxi, but somehow it exploded. The bearded policeman looked at the scene doubtfully. In addition to the fragments of the taxi, there was some blurred flesh left by the black driver. Why did the taxi explode like that, but you are fine? Because we jumped out of the car in advance. Qin Haodong said helplessly. He didn't expect the M country police to come so quickly. If they had known this, they would have left earlier. This kind of thing was really difficult to explain. The bearded policeman said warily, Why did you jump out of the car? Because you knew there was a bomb in front of you? How did you know? Are you accomplices of the person who set off the bomb? Did you murder the taxi driver together? Qin Haodong said, Of course not. We just arrived in M country. How could we have accomplices? Besides, we don't know this driver. How could we murder him? No, you are too suspicious. You must go back with us for investigation. The bearded policeman waved his hand, and another policeman immediately took out handcuffs and came to them. Hu Shaoxian gave Qin Haodong an inquiring look, but Qin Haodong shook his head. They came to find Davis to save people. If they had a head-on conflict with the police as soon as they arrived in M country, it would be difficult to deal with later. Now they could only take one step at a time and act according to the circumstances. The 2 people were taken into the police car, bypassed the scene of the explosion, and drove forward. Half an hour later, Qin Haodong felt something was wrong. They should have arrived in the city by now, but the direction they were going was getting more and more desolate. It seemed that they were getting farther and farther away from the city. Officer, where are we going? Qin Haodong asked. Don't worry, we'll be there soon. The bearded policeman said as he drove the police car off the road and went straight to the foot of a mountain. He parked the car in front of a small forest. Get out of the car. We're here. The bearded policeman said as he opened the door and got out of the police car first. Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian got out of the car and were surprised to find 20 or 30 gunmen in black standing in front of the small forest. These people were holding all kinds of guns in their hands. Some were long, some were short, and some were of different shapes. The muzzles were pointed at them as if they were holding a gun fair. He and Hu Shaoxian looked at each other. Both of them understood that these policemen were also fake. It was very likely that they were the people who had planted the bomb in advance. They were all killers sent by Davis. However, Chin Haodong did not panic. He glanced at the bearded policeman and said, "Officer, why did you bring us here?" "Boy, you're really an idiot. Can't you see that we're not policemen at all?" The bearded policeman laughed and tore off his police uniform, revealing his strong muscles. He said, "We're all Mr. Davis's men. The bomb just now was set by us. I didn't expect you to be so lucky that you didn't die. Where's Davis? Why didn't he come? Did he kidnap my daughter?" The bearded man glanced at Chin Haodong and said, "If you want to see our boss, hand over your formula first. Otherwise, I'll show you the advanced weapons of our country." As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed to the weapons in the hands of the gunman. "See? These guns are enough to turn you into a sieve." After that, he turned to look at Hu Shaoxian and said with a lewd smile, "Little girl, don't be afraid. We won't kill you. Later, we'll let you have a taste of the country's men. They're definitely much better than this toy boy." Hu Shaoxian smiled charmingly and said, "Really? Don't be so good-looking but useless. You'll disappoint me then." The bearded man had never seen such a beautiful woman. His eyes flashed and he wanted to press Hu Shaoxian down immediately. He fell to the ground. He said to Chin Haodong, "Did you hear that? I don't have time to waste with you. Hand over the formula quickly. Didn't Davis tell you that I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner? Today, I'll let you Westerners see the magic of Chinese medicine." Chin Haodong shook his hands and the handcuffs fell to the ground. Then he moved his wrists, raised his hand and snapped his fingers. He said to the gunmen, "Get down, all of you." The bearded man was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Chin Haodong to get rid of the handcuffs so easily. Just as he was about to order them to shoot, he found that his men fell to the ground and even threw their guns aside. Hu Shaoxian sneered and said, "See? You guys are really good-looking but useless. What's going on?" The bearded man was shocked. He raised his hand to touch the pistol on his waist. Suddenly, he felt dizzy and then fell to the ground with a plop. Chin Haodong used the ecstasy pill to knock these people out. He reached out to grab the bearded man's pistol and raised his hand to point at an aircraft hovering in the sky. Chapter 350. With his spirit locked on, Chin Haodong's bullets didn't miss. He shot the aircraft's propellers twice and it fell to the ground. He walked over, smiled at the camera on the drone, and then raised his foot to step on it. In the laboratory of the underground base, Davis and Garnett were watching the live broadcast on the big screen. Garnett said angrily, "Damn it, we put so many explosives, but we didn't kill this hateful guy. Is he a devil?" Davis said with a cigar in his mouth, "I told you that this Huaxia guy would not be easy to deal with." Garnett said, "Fortunately, I still have a backup plan. Now that he is facing so many gunmen, I want to see what he can do. Unless he is God, there is absolutely no way he can escape." He was very confident in the gunmen he had sent. These people had not only undergone strict training, but they were also very good at shooting. They also had excellent weapons. No matter how good Chin Haodong was, he would not be able to compete with them. As soon as he finished speaking, the gunmen fell to the ground one after another. Garnett exclaimed, "God, what the hell happened? How could this be?" Then, Chin Haodong's handsome face appeared on the big screen. Then, a huge foot fell, and the big screen was covered by snowflakes. "Damn it, I must kill him. I must kill him." Garnett roared angrily. Davis took a puff of his cigarette and said calmly, "Old man, why are you so anxious? His daughter is in our hands now. You didn't use the ready-made hostage. You just had to do these laborious and unrewarding things. Now you are at a disadvantage, aren't you?" Garnett took a deep breath, calmed down, and said, "Then what do you think we should do?" Davis said, "It's very simple. Chin Haodong should be the anxious person now. Let him worry outside. Our base is very secretive. It is impossible for outsiders to find this place without a guide. Wait for him to be like a headless fly for 2 or 3 days. When he has completely lost his mind, we will find a chance to kill him. Well, I'll listen to you this time, Garnett said. After crushing the aerial camera, Qin Haodong thought of something and put all the weapons and ammunition of these people into his storage ring. The more things they had, the better. The divine mercenaries could use them in the future. After doing all this, he took out an antidote and stuffed it into the bearded man's mouth before slapping him awake. Seeing Qin Haodong, the bearded man subconsciously touched the back again, only to find that it was a desert. The eagle had disappeared. He pulled out a dagger from his leg and rushed toward Qin Haodong. Hu Shaoxian lifted her leg and kicked hard on the bearded man's stomach with her 10-centimeter-long high heel. He was kicked 4 or 5 meters away and curled up on the ground like a prawn. When he looked at Hu Shaoxian again, his eyes were full of lust. Filth had completely disappeared and was replaced with a face full of fear. He did not understand how such a petite woman could have such great strength. Could this be the legendary Chinese kung fu? A coward like you dares to have designs on me? Hu Shaoxian looked disdainful. She stepped in front of the bearded man, lifted her right leg, and stepped on his lower abdomen with her toes. The high heels were just between his legs. Between. Tell me where Davis is, or I'll cripple you right now. No. Please don't. Seeing that his treasure was threatened, the bearded man was so scared that his face turned pale and he trembled all over. He hurriedly cried, "Mercy, please let me go. Davis asked me to do this." Hu Shaoxian asked, "Tell me, where is Davis now?" The bearded man said, "I really don't know. I'm just in the 13th zone. I have some gunmen under my command. Davis just called me and asked me to kill you, but I really don't know where he is. You don't want to tell me? It seems that you want to enter the palace to serve the emperor," Hu Shaoxian said as she exerted force on her feet. The bearded man suddenly felt a sharp pain coming from his lower abdomen. He suddenly screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Looking at the high heel, Qin Haodong clamped his legs for no reason. It seemed that the bearded man's only function was to pee in the future. "Please let me go. I'll tell you now." The bearded man desperately begged for mercy. "You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." Hu Shaoxian lifted her toes and said, "Tell me, where is he?" The bearded man felt better, but his lower abdomen still hurt. He didn't know if he could still use it in the future. "He's hiding in the 13th zone, waiting for my news." Qin Haodong pulled the bearded man up, stared into his eyes and asked, "Tell me the truth, where is Davis?" This time, he used mind manipulating. The bearded man's eyes flashed with confusion. He said, "I really don't know. Although I often cooperate with Davis, I never know where he is." Qin Haodong asked, "Then why do you say he's in the 13th zone?" "I want to lead you there, and then let my men kill you, especially this woman. I must let my men torture her to death." Under the mind manipulating, the bearded man did not hide anything. His face was ferocious as he spoke, and the hatred in his heart completely burst out. "Go to hell." Seeing that the guy still wanted to retaliate against her, Hu Shaoxian kicked him in the chest. Crack. Crack. In the sound of cracking bones, a large part of the bearded man's chest collapsed. Then he spat out mouthfuls of blood. It seemed that he would not survive. After dealing with the bearded man, Hu Shaoxian asked, "Do you want to wake up 2 more?" "No, these people are all the bearded man's men. Since the bearded man doesn't know where Davis is, it's useless to ask them." Then Qin Haodong took out the 1,000 blades. He gently pricked the tip of the knife on his left index finger. A crystal clear drop of blood flowed out, but it did not fall. Instead, it slowly floated into the air. He made another incantation. The blood in the air shone with a red light, and then Tang Tang's face appeared in the red light. Hu Shaoxian asked in surprise, What kind of magic is this? Qin Haodong raised his hand and the red light disappeared. Then he said, blood manipulation. I use blood as a guide to find the person I'm looking for. As long as the distance is no more than 100 miles, I can know where Tang Tang is. That's a good idea. Can you give it to me? Let's talk about it when you have a daughter. While talking, the two of them got into the bearded man's police car again. This time, the driver was Qin Haodong. The car drove in the direction of the blood manipulation. Soon they found that the location of the blood manipulation was in the Devil Forest. They were not too far from the Devil Forest. They reached the edge of the forest in half an hour. It was almost evening. In order not to be discovered, Qin Haodong stopped the car far away. The two of them walked into the forest together. After entering the forest, they found that there were strict sentries, and even snipers were placed on several high points. No wonder the taxi driver said that no one would be able to come out alive. Surrounded by such dense firepower, ordinary people would never be able to come out alive once they entered. Hu Shaoxian said, Davis is so afraid of death. Did he strengthen the defense because he knew you were coming? It doesn't seem like it. Davis has Tang Tang in his hands, so he wouldn't bother to set up so many sentries. There must be an unknown secret here, Qin Haodong said. Anyway, let's go in first. Although the security here was strict, it worked for ordinary people. It didn't work for Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian. Soon, the two of them quietly sneaked into the Devil Forest. After entering, they found that the closer they got to the periphery of the forest, the tighter the security was. On the contrary, the inside was relaxed. Maybe the people inside thought that no one could break through the defense outside. In the middle of the forest was an open space with an area of several square kilometers. It was unknown whether it was man-made or natural. The whole open space was covered with green grass without any trees. The two of them found a hidden place to hide. Hu Shaoxian asked, is it the wrong place? It doesn't look like Davis's residence, and there is no sign of Tang Tang. Yes. Qin Haodong pointed to the ground. I can feel that Tang Tang is down here. There are so many guards outside. Of course, they won't guard an open space. There must be a secret down there. Oh. Hu Shaoxian said, but it's difficult. We can't even find the entrance. How can we get in? Don't worry. The people underground will come out sooner or later. At least someone will come out to replace them. Qin Haodong said, before that, we can do something first. After that, he stretched out his right hand and a small triangular flag appeared in his hand. Choosing a position, he shot the flag out. After the flag was inserted into the ground, it quickly disappeared, as if nothing had happened. What is this? Are you going to set up a formation? Hu Shaoxian had recognized that the small flag shot by Qin Haodong was the formation flag brought back from the Shenangjia underground palace. Yes. Qin Haodong nodded. Since we are here this time, we must completely solve the problem of Wilson Company. Otherwise, these people will come to us like flies in the future. It will be very annoying. Hu Shaoxian asked, what formation are you going to set up? Qin Haodong said, anyway, we have plenty of time. I will set up a few more. First of all, we need to set up a trap formation to prevent the people inside from running out. In addition, we need to set up an illusion formation and the trigram fire formation of 5 elements. Maybe they will be useful. Hu Shaoxian nodded. If they wanted to keep all the people inside here, the trap formation was indeed the best way. As they talked, they walked around the open space. Qin Haodong kept throwing out formation flags. 2 hours later, all the 3 formations were set up, but they had not been activated for the time being. Nothing unusual could be seen from the outside. They were about to sit down and have a rest. At this moment, the turf in the center of the open space in the middle of the forest suddenly began to move slowly to both sides, revealing a huge underground passage. Hu Shaoxian said, their entrance is here. Shall we go in? Qin Haodong said, if we go in now, we will definitely be discovered by them. Let's find a chance to sneak in later and see what they are going to do first. Soon, a group of gunmen came out of the underground passage. These people were dressed in black, wearing hoods and carrying various weapons and guns. Qin Haodong said, it seems that it's time to change shifts. Sure enough, these people came out to replace the guards outside. After the shift was completed, the gunmen in black re-entered the underground passage and the passage was closed again. Hu Shaoxian said, that's easy. We can catch 2 gunmen in black and change their clothes. Then we can enter the underground passage together. Qin Haodong glanced at the 2 towering peaks on her chest and said, I can sneak in, but I don't think you can. Everyone can see that you are a woman. It's not a big deal. I can deal with it. I often encountered this situation when I was doing tasks before. After Hu Shaoxian finished speaking, she did not avoid Qin Haodong at all and directly took off her coat. Chapter 351. Without the restraint of the coat, the 2 quite large peaks looked more towering. Qin Haodong couldn't help but swallow his saliva when he saw her white jade-like skin and bottomless ravines. Hu Shaoxian took out a chest wrapper from the storage ring and wrapped the 2 peaks tightly. Although they were still quite large, they would not be conspicuous if she wore a loose coat. How about it? Is it okay now? Qin Haodong licked his lips and said, well. Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to recover in the future? Hu Shaoxian glanced at him charmingly and said with a sneer, what's wrong with that? Even if it's small, you're the one who suffers. Qin Haodong was speechless. Why was he the one who suffered? What kind of logic was this? The 2 of them found a hidden place to rest for a while and eat something. Then they began to pay attention to these men in black. Finally, they chose 2 men who were about the same size as them as their targets. The 2 men were wearing hoods, so they couldn't see their faces at all. There were numbers 25 and 26 written on their lapels and cuffs, respectively. It seemed that they were used to distinguish them. Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian were not in a hurry. They stood behind the 2 gunmen and memorized their voices and habits. When they felt that it was enough, they knocked the 2 men out and changed their clothes. In order to prevent the unconscious gunmen from being discovered, Qin Haodong first sealed their acupoints, then chose 2 leafy trees from the side, tied the 2 men to the top of the trees, and left them to fend for themselves. After doing all this, they took over the original positions of the 2 gunmen and waited for the next shift. Unexpectedly, they waited for an entire night. It wasn't until the sun rose in the east the next morning that another team of gunmen came out from the underground tunnel. Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian exchanged positions with the gunmen who took over and followed the team of gunmen to the underground passage. In order to leave later, they deliberately slowed down their pace and stood at the end of the team. But they didn't go far before they heard the leader next to them shouting, Number 25, Number 26, why don't you 2 go back to your positions? Have you forgotten our discipline? Oh. I'll be right back. Qin Haodong imitated the gunman's accent and said. The 2 of them obediently returned to the middle of the group. However, it was impossible for them to leave midway. However, he had no choice but to take it 1 step at a time. They followed the team into the underground tunnel, and the door slowly closed. As the 2 of them walked in, they secretly observed their surroundings. The construction of this place was extremely modern. The environment was clean and tidy, and it was very spacious. The headlights above their heads lit up the place, and it didn't seem dark at all. If they hadn't walked in from the outside, they wouldn't have been able to tell that they were in the underground world. The area of this underground base was very large. After entering, the leader directly led them to the lounge on the right. After entering the door, the gunmen found the corresponding positions for their numbers and began to put down their weapons, remove their hoods, and take off their clothes. This time, the 2 of them were a little dumbfounded. If they were in a separate room, they might be able to get away with it. However, they were in full view of everyone here. As soon as they took off their masks, they would immediately be exposed. The leader next to them shouted, "Number 25, number 26, what are you waiting for? Why aren't you changing? Hurry up and change your clothes, take a shower, and then go to the restaurant to eat." Hearing that they were going to take a shower, Wu Xiaoxian was a little dumbfounded. She was a woman. How could she take a shower in front of a group of big men? At this time, some gunmen next to her had begun to take off their pants. She couldn't watch a group of big men naked. She couldn't help but look at Qin Haodong for help. Qin Haodong also knew that it was impossible to sneak around again. Fortunately, they had entered the underground base. He took out another ecstasy pill and crushed it. Soon the gunman in the lounge fell to the ground. "Let's go." Qin Haodong took off the number on the chest of the gunman leader and walked out of the lounge with Wu Xiaoxian. They followed the direction of the little fellow. Not far from the door, they encountered another heavy metal door. Qin Haodong scanned the leader's number in the position of identity confirmation. With a beep, the door slowly opened to both sides. It seemed that the leader had a high authority. After entering the door, the two of them were shocked by the scene in front of them, and then an irrepressible anger rose. Directly in front of them was a huge bulletproof glass wall. Behind the glass wall were densely packed glass containers. Each container was filled with red liquid. The liquid was either immersed in a complete human body, or cut off arms and legs, and various human organs. It could be seen that this was the core area of the experiment. Many staff in scientific research uniforms walked around. They didn't care about Qin Haodong and Wu Xiaoxian, and continued with their work. The two of them calmed down and continued to walk forward. More strange things appeared. Monsters of different shapes began to appear in the glass containers. Some had a snake's body and a human's head, some had a leopard's head and a human's body, and some vaguely looked like humans. In fact, they were all put together by various monsters. Thinking of the various biochemical monsters they had encountered before, the two of them immediately understood that this was the base where the monsters were made. Those cyborgs were produced here. After all, Wu Xiaoxian was a woman. Seeing the scene in front of her, she couldn't help but feel nauseous. She quickly ran her genuine qi to suppress the feeling of wanting to vomit. Then, she whispered in Qin Haodong's ear, "Damn it, they actually used human beings for experiments. They will be punished by heaven." Although Qin Haodong didn't say anything, he was also extremely angry. He had already sentenced everyone in the base to death. Perhaps in the eyes of these researchers, what they were doing was just ordinary work, but this touched his bottom line. Even the disciples of the Devil Gate in the cultivation world were not so cruel. These experimental bodies that were being cut up had different skin colors. Some were from the East, some were from Africa, and some were from the West. Without exception, they were all living people, but they were used for experiments. At this moment, he made up his mind. As long as he rescued the little fellow, he must uproot this base. In the hall in the center of the base, Davis and Garnett had just eaten the exquisite breakfast that the servants had brought. Davis picked up a white napkin and wiped his mouth. He said, "Old man, Beardy is dead. Our experimental bodies will soon be in shortage. It seems that we need to find a new spokesperson." Garnett said, "That's easy. There are many violent people like him in District 13. They are willing to do anything as long as they are paid. What I'm worried about now is that Huaxia man. After killing Beardy, he disappeared. I don't know where he went." Davis frowned and said, "Qin Haodong is indeed difficult to deal with, but don't worry too much. After all, his daughter is in our hands. With this bargaining chip, he won't be able to cause any trouble." At this moment, a harsh alarm sounded in the base. Everyone immediately became nervous. This was the alarm of an enemy invasion. Garnett grabbed the walkie-talkie in front of him and asked, "Who sent the alarm? What's going on?" The watchman in the monitoring room said in a hurry, "Boss, we just found that all the gunmen in the lounge have fainted. Also, 2 people wearing gunmen's clothes have crossed the experimental area. They are about to reach you." "How could this be?" Garnet hurriedly asked someone to switch the big screen to the lounge. He saw the gunman lying on the ground. It was exactly the same scene as when the gunman had fainted in the past. Davis said, "It's Qin Haodong. He must have come in. No wonder we can't see him outside." Garnet cried, "How did he make so many people faint at once? Is he a magician?" "He's definitely not a magician," Davis said. "I guess he must have a biochemical weapon that can make people faint quickly. He can also hypnotize people easily, so we must be careful." As he spoke, he waved to the guard captain next to him. "Gather all the guards immediately. They must be fully armed. Put on gas masks and sunglasses. Don't be hypnotized by this guy." "Yes." The guard captain answered and ran to gather the team. Davis picked up a pair of big sunglasses and put them on his face. At the same time, he threw another pair of sunglasses to Garnet. "Put them on, old man. Our guests will be here soon." Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian passed through the experimental area and arrived at the center of the entire underground base. When they passed through another electronic door, they suddenly found 50 armed gunmen in front of them. These people were not only fully armed, but they were also wearing gas masks and big sunglasses. He couldn't help but smile. It seemed that these people were targeting him. "Old friend, welcome," Davis said as he stood up from the sofa and made a welcoming gesture with a smile. In contrast, Garnet's expression was much more serious. Qin Haodong said, "Davis, did you kidnap my daughter?" Davis said with a smile, "Qin, you're being too harsh. This is not a kidnapping. I just invited your daughter to M country as a guest. She's living happily here." Qin Haodong said, "Don't talk nonsense. Tell me your conditions. What do you want me to do to get my daughter back?" "Well, since you're so anxious, I'll get straight to the point." Davis said, "Immediately ask your people to stop the production of the blood revival elixir and give me your formula. As long as you do these two things, I can immediately return your lovely daughter to you. It's that simple." "No problem, I can promise you that," Qin Haodong said. "Before I came here, Tangmen Traditional Chinese Medicine Company had already stopped the production of the blood revival elixir and was producing the Great Liver Protecting Pill. This is completely in line with your requirements. As for the formula, I'll write it for you now." As he spoke, Qin Haodong strode forward, grabbed a pen and paper from a table, and wrote down a formula. After he finished writing, he flicked his finger. The originally light piece of paper fell directly on the tea table in front of Davis, as if it was not affected by any air resistance. "Mr. Davis, is it time to return my daughter to me?" At this time, Garnet said, "No, the two formulas you gave us before were fake. No one knows whether it's real or fake this time. We have to verify it before we can believe you." Qin Haodong glanced at him and asked, "Who are you?" Davis took the formula and said with a smile, "Let me formally introduce you. This is my partner, Mr. Garnet." Qin Haodong said, "Bosses, I'm in your territory now, and there are so many guns pointing at me. Are you afraid that I'll run away?" Davis thought for a moment and said, "Well, we'll also show our sincerity and return the lovely little girl to you first. However, you must wait until we get the results of the experiment before you leave." Then, he waved his hand behind him, and a slim woman came out with the little fellow in her arms. Chapter 352. The woman's figure was very similar to Lin Momo's, but her appearance was much worse. It seemed that she was the one who had tricked Tang Tang by pretending to be Lin Momo. "Papa, I miss you so much." After seeing Qin Haodong, the little fellow immediately cried out excitedly. The woman turned her head to look at Davis. Davis waved his hand and the woman put the little fellow on the ground. Tang Tang immediately ran to Qin Haodong happily and plunged into his arms. "Papa, I miss you. I want to kiss you," the little fellow said as she reached out to hug Qin Haodong's neck and kissed his face with her chubby little mouth. Looking at the warm scene in front of her, Hu Shaoxian felt an inexplicable envy in her heart. When could she have such a lovely daughter? But at this moment, she was surprised to find that the little fellow opened her mouth and spat out a javelin-like tongue, directly stabbing Qin Haodong's left eye. At the same time, a sharp knife appeared in her palm and slashed at Qin Haodong's throat. It was a fake Tang Tang. Seeing the little fellow's strange behavior, Hu Shaoxian immediately thought of Terminator No. 1 that she had encountered not long ago. Their behavior was too similar. Haodong, be careful. Hu Shaoxian hurriedly shouted to remind him. Qin Haodong had been prepared. From the moment the woman appeared with the little fellow, he was sure that the one in front of him was a fake, because the direction of the blood-drawing skill was not the little girl in front of him. Therefore, he had been in a state of high alert from beginning to end. At this time, facing the attack of the fake Tang Tang, he suddenly swung his right fist and punched the guy in the chest. Before the knife in the fake Tang Tang's hand touched Qin Haodong's skin, she let out a scream. Her whole body was thrown out more than 10 meters like a ball. With a bang, she hit the wall next to her, and then fell to the ground and stopped moving. Then, a computer not far away exploded with a bang, emitting a cloud of black smoke. It turned out that Qin Haodong was angry that the other party was pretending to be his daughter. He used all his strength to directly shatter the chip in the fake's heart. Seeing that the little girl had been completely crippled, Garnet shouted angrily, "The asterisk starred, you destroyed my Terminator 4. Davis didn't panic at all. He clapped his hands and looked at Qin Haodong, saying, "Qin, I'm really curious. What kind of eyes do you have? You can even see through Terminator No. 4, which was cloned from your daughter's genes. How did you do it? I can only say that you are too stupid." Qin Haodong glared at Davis and said, "I've given you the formula, but you're fooling me with a fake one. Is this your sincerity?" Davis said, "Huaxia man, to be honest, I really appreciate you. Join us and I'll give you everything you want, including money, women, power, whatever you want." Qin Haodong said, "I'm sorry, I'm not interested in being a puppet. Please give my daughter back to me. Looks like it's impossible for us to cooperate." Davis shook his head with a look of pity. He raised his hand and said to the gunners, "Send him on his way." Seeing that the gunners had ordered to open fire, Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian moved and suddenly rushed toward Davis and Garnet. But it was too late. The gunners immediately pulled the trigger after receiving the order. Fire snake spat out and instantly turned the two people in the field into sieves. Qin Haodong struggled a few times, then lay on the ground and stopped moving. Are they really dead? How could it be so simple? Looking at the two people on the ground, Davis couldn't believe his eyes. Garnet cried excitedly, "What's there to doubt? With so many bullets, even an immortal would have been blown up." He came to Qin Haodong's side and kicked him hard. He laughed wildly and said, "Huaxia man, although you are very powerful, in the end, you still died in our hands. If you want to fight against our organization, in your next life." Looking at everything in front of him, Davis also felt that it was real. He took a puff of the cigar in his hand and said, "This ending is a bit boring. I haven't used my hostage yet." As he spoke, he clapped the red button on the table. The wall next to him slowly opened like two doors, revealing a glass house about 20 square meters in size. The interior of the house was extremely exquisite, like a palace in a fairy tale world. At this time, the little fellow was sitting on a cartoon sofa, eating potato chips and watching cartoons across from her. Since the hostage is useless, then destroy her and use her as experimental material. The daughter of that Huaxia man must be the best experimental material. As he spoke, a ferocious look flashed across Davis's fat face. After receiving his order, the woman next to him walked to the glass house and raised her hand to press a button with a skull logo. This button was the poison gas switch. As long as it was pressed, the glass house would be instantly engulfed by the poison gas, and the little fellow would become a lifeless experimental material. Just as her hand was about to touch the button, suddenly a cold light flashed. The woman screamed and one of her arms fell to the ground. Then another light flashed across the woman's throat. The woman covered her neck with her remaining hand and looked around, but she saw nothing. She fell to the ground with a look of unwillingness on her face. Davis was shocked. At this moment, there was a crazy sound of gunfire. A dense barrage of bullets was fired at the surrounding gunmen. For a moment, there was a lot of screaming. One gunman after another fell to the ground. These gunmen were horrified to find that they could only face the bullets, but they could not see where the bullets came from. They did not find the shooter until they died. Before they could figure out what was going on, all 50 gunmen in the hall were killed and fell to the ground in disorder. Bastard, what's going on? Who did it? Who did it? Garnett roared crazily. He did not understand how it had suddenly become like this. I did it. What's wrong? If you have a problem, go to God. With a cold voice, Chin Haodong's figure slowly appeared beside Garnett, holding the 1,000 blades in his hand that shone with a cold light. Seeing Chin Haodong reappear in front of him, Garnett's face was full of horror. He turned his head to the side, only to see that Chin Haodong and Hu Xiaoxian's bodies had disappeared. Garnett was about to say something when a cold light flashed. His head flew up and he could no longer make a sound. Everything was over. In the blink of an eye, only Davis was left in the base. In front of him stood Chin Haodong, who was holding the 1,000 blades, and Hu Xiaoxian, who was holding an M16. It turned out that the scene of them dying under the gun was an illusion. After Chin Haodong disabled the fake Tang Tang, he immediately activated the illusion formation that had been set up. The whole base was under his control. He could hide himself if he wanted and let Davis see what he wanted. Looking at the two men with murderous faces, Davis said in a panic, "Don't kill me. Don't kill me. If you kill me, your daughter won't be able to get out." At this time, the little fellow in the glass house saw Chin Haodong and immediately cried out happily, "Papa, you've come to pick me up." "Tang Tang, wait a minute. Papa will get you out right away." Chin Haodong turned his head and shouted at Davis, "Open the door and let my daughter out." Seeing that he cared so much about Tang Tang, Davis's heart seemed to be a lot more at ease. He had a hostage in hand, so Chin Haodong would not dare to kill him anyway. "No, if I let her go now, you will definitely kill me. You must ensure my safety first, and then I can let her out." Chin Haodong said with a murderous look, "Damn fatty, are you talking to me about conditions?" Davis hurriedly said, "I'm telling you, don't mess around. This house is specially made. Although it's made of glass, it's 10 times harder than stainless steel. No one can open it without my password. You won't be able to see your daughter in this life. You can only watch her die in there, you think too much." Chin Haodong kicked Davis in the lower abdomen and directly kicked him out. He slammed into the wall behind him and then lay on the ground vomiting blood. At this time, Hu Xiaoxian pulled the trigger in her hand. The M16 shot wildly at the corner of the glass house. Sparks flew and bullets flew. Davis had just gotten up from the ground when a stray bullet hit his thigh. He screamed again and fell to the ground. He lay on the ground, covering his thigh with one hand and his head with the other. He cried, "Don't shoot. Don't shoot anymore. Guns are useless. Even rockets can't penetrate this kind of high-strength fiberglass." Hu Xiaoxian stopped and approached the glass house to take a look. She saw that there was not even a spot on the fiberglass in front of her, which showed how hard it was. She took out the purple flash sword and stabbed it with her internal force. After a crisp sound, the purple flash sword bounced off in an arc, leaving only a small white spot on the fiberglass. Chin Haodong came over and tried with the 1,000 blades in his hand. It still couldn't hurt the high-strength fiberglass in front of him. Davis got up from the ground again, limped over and said, "How about it? Do you know the power of high-tech? Let me go. If I don't enter the password, the oxygen supply will be cut off in an hour. Your daughter will soon suffocate to death." Chin Haodong looked at the proud Davis with a sneer. He knew that the old man wanted to threaten him, but he would kill Davis and destroy the base today anyway. He would not be threatened by him. He turned to the little fellow and said, "Tang Tang, use your phoenix fire." "Papa, can I use the fire?" Hearing that her father asked her to use the phoenix fire, the little fellow's eyes were filled with uncontrollable excitement. Qin Haodong said, "Of course. As long as someone threatens your life, you can use it at any time." Davis didn't understand what the phoenix fire was. He cried, "I tell you, this is a special high-strength fiberglass steel. It's super heat resistant. Ordinary flames are useless." He was trying to persuade Qin Haodong when he saw a red light flashing in the little fellow's eyes. Then she opened her mouth and spat out a huge flame, like a huge firebird pouncing on the glass wall in front of her. It's impossible." Davis opened his mouth wide in surprise, even forgetting the pain in his leg. But at this time, a scene that surprised him even more happened. The originally indestructible glass wall was like snow meeting boiling water in front of this flame. It melted instantly, and in the blink of an eye, a hole about 2 meters in diameter was burned by the phoenix fire. Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian were not surprised by all this. Even the Millennium Ice Iron could be melted. A small fiberglass was nothing. Papa. Papa. Tang Tang is here. Tang Tang, I miss you so much." The little fellow jumped out of the glass house and threw herself into Qin Haodong's arms. She held his neck with her 2 chubby little hands and kept acting like a spoiled child. "My God, what kind of monster is this?" Davis's face was full of fear after the shock. Now he had lost his last support. Chapter 353. Qin Haodong held the little fellow in his arms for a while. Just as he was about to turn around and settle the score with Davis, a great sense of crisis suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. Thinking of the self-explosion of the Terminator, he understood what the problem was. He quickly pulled Hu Shaoxian with one hand and the little fellow with the other, and rushed into the glass house just now. Davis seemed to have realized the problem as well. He limped towards the glass house. Perhaps halfway there, the dead gunmen on the ground activated their self-destruct sequence. A series of explosions rang out, and flesh and blood filled the entire room along with the huge explosive force. Davis was killed first, and then his body also exploded. For a moment, the hall was filled with the unpleasant smell of blood and the smoke of the explosion. At this time, the glass house played its role to the fullest. As expected of something that could not even be blown up by rockets, its defenses remained intact despite the layers of explosions. The 3 of them were not affected by it at all, but the air quality became a little worse. About 5 minutes later, the explosion was completely over. The bodies of the 50 gunmen, Davis and Garnett, had completely disappeared. They were all blown to pieces, leaving nothing behind. Seeing the scene of flesh and blood flying, Hu Shaoxian said with some fear, "I don't know who invented this organization. It's really evil. They are so cruel to their own people." Qin Haodong sighed and said, "It's a pity that we didn't find any clues from Davis. Otherwise, we should have uprooted this organization. This evil organization should not exist in this world. Huaxia man, you are too arrogant." Just when Qin Haodong and Hu Shaoxian thought it was all over, a voice suddenly sounded in the hall. Then the surrounding buildings began to rotate strangely. With a loud cracking sound, the original scenery completely disappeared. The most terrible thing was that even the door they came in through was gone. The surrounding became dark walls, and the whole room became an airtight box. Then, the wall opposite them lit up, and a huge electronic screen appeared on the wall, and on the screen was Davis's greasy face. "Qin Haodong, I have to say that you are better than I thought. You killed so many of my men and my double here. You are really good." Qin Haodong was slightly shocked. He didn't expect that the Davis who had just died was just a fake, and the real Davis was not here. Davis seemed to have guessed what he was thinking. He laughed and said, "How is it? Isn't it a pleasant surprise? Let me tell you, this base was built by me. I am a god here. No one can defeat me, and neither can you. After calming down, Qin Haodong said, I heard from Wang Desheng that you all belong to an organization. I'm curious about what kind of organization it is. Davis said, the strength of our organization is beyond your imagination. Although you are very strong and excellent, you are not worth mentioning in front of our organization. It's laughable that you wanted to uproot the organization just now. To borrow a Chinese phrase, this is called a fool's dream. Qin Haodong didn't argue with him and said, tell me, how can you let us out? Come out? You still want to come out? Davis laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke. After laughing enough, he said, I designed this hall for the enemy, but I didn't expect that the first one to rush here would be a Huaxia person. Let me tell you, once you enter here, you won't be able to get out alive. Although the situation has changed a little, and the glass house has become your refuge, it doesn't matter. Now there is no air circulation here, and soon you will suffocate painfully here. Hearing this, Qin Haodong patted Hu Shaoxian. Hu Shaoxian immediately understood and turned to the turtle breathing method to minimize the consumption of oxygen. Qin Haodong walked out of the glass house, raised his hand and patted the wall next to him, making a muffled sound. He felt that it was made of pure steel, which was harder than a copper wall and thick. Davis laughed and said, don't even think about getting out. This is a wall made of pure steel. It is 5 meters thick, and even missiles can't break it. I advise you to sit down and waste less oxygen, so you can live a few more minutes. Qin Haodong looked back and smiled. Do you think you will win? Davis laughed and said, don't you think so? Are you very angry now? You really want to hit me, but can you get out? Qin Haodong said, it seems that you know too little about the East. I can't get out, but I can also deal with you. After that, he made a gesture. A burst of spiritual chi surged, and the trap formation and the 5 elements trigram fire formation outside were all activated. Davis looked at Qin Haodong and did not feel anything strange. He asked in surprise, what are you doing? Qin Haodong smiled and said, you'll know soon. Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, there was a harsh alarm from Davis, and then someone ran over and shouted, Boss, it's not good. There's a fire outside. Davis cried, that's impossible. We are all built with top fireproof materials. How could there be a fire? But boss, there's really a fire. Our fire facilities don't work at all. The fire is getting bigger and bigger. Let's get out quickly, or it will be too late. Davis turned around and snarled at Qin Haodong with a ferocious face, did you do this? Qin Haodong spread out his hands and said with a smile, it's a small gift. I hope you like it. Bastard, if you dare to destroy my painstaking efforts, I will tear you into pieces and burn your bones to ashes. Just as Davis was roaring, the big screen suddenly went dark. Some facilities must have been burned. Hu Shaoxian said, Haodong, if you really burn the outside, what should we do? I just want to create some chaos for them, or we won't have a chance to get out. Qin Haodong said and patted the little fellow's face, we have Tang Tang, the Suzaku sacred body. Are we afraid that we can't get out? The little fellow said cheerfully, yes. Yes. I can burn it and we can get out. Hu Shaoxian thought about it and agreed. When they were in the underground palace, the little fellow's phoenix fire could even melt the millennium ice iron, let alone these ordinary steel. In order to save time, Qin Haodong closed his eyes and felt the surrounding environment with his powerful spirit. Then he raised his hand and pointed to a wall and said, the wall here is the thinnest. Tang Tang, start here. After that, he put the little fellow on the ground and took a few steps back with Hu Shaoxian. The little fellow took a deep breath, and her eyes flashed red. Then she opened her mouth and spat out a huge flame. These seemingly indestructible steel melted immediately after encountering the phoenix fire, and soon a passage was burned in the wall. 5 minutes later, the 3 people climbed out of the cooled passage. At this time, they had left the underground experimental base and returned to the ground. In front of them, there was thick smoke and fire everywhere. It was just noon, the time of the day when the yang qi was the strongest. The burning yang qi raised the power of Qin Haodong's 5 elements trigram fire formation to the maximum. If it was just an ordinary fire, it would not burn the underground base. But this was the invisible 5 elements trigram fire formation, which was almost invincible and could melt anything. At this time, the fire was rising above and below the ground, and even the mechanism to open the underground passage was burned. All the people in the base were trapped underground, and there was no way to escape. These people usually regarded human life as nothing and experimented with living people. They never thought that one day they would be burned to death. Qin Haodong had no mercy for these people. He made another incantation to turn the 5 elements trigram fire formation to the maximum, and the fire was burning more and more. Because he was the controller, he was unimpeded in the fire formation, and the fire would not cause any hindrance to them. At this moment, the ground not far away slowly cracked, and then it was upgraded to a helipad, on which a helicopter was parked. A pilot took the lead in boarding the helicopter. After starting it, a huge airflow blew the fire away. Then, Davis ran out with 7 or 8 bodyguards. At first, he wanted to put out the fire. After all, this underground base was his nest, but later he found that all his efforts were in vain. The fire was burning too strangely. The more it burned, the more it burned. Things like fire extinguishers were useless. In the end, he had to give up fighting the fire. Standing in front of the helicopter, he looked back at the underground base that had become a sea of fire. His heart was constantly bleeding. This was the result of his years of hard work, and now it had been burned to the ground. He patted the safe in his hand. Fortunately, the main scientific and technological achievements of these years were here. With these things, he could make a comeback. Qin Haodong, damn you, you burned my underground base. But I can make a comeback. You can only become barbecue. Davis cursed angrily to vent his anger. At this time, he heard someone next to him say, "Old thing, are you cursing me?" Davis was scared out of his wits. He turned his head and saw Qin Haodong appear beside him like a ghost with the little fellow in his arms. Hu Shaoxian was standing next to him with a smile. You. How did you get out?" Davis couldn't imagine how Qin Haodong escaped. "How could that broken thing of yours trap me?" Qin Haodong looked at him playfully and said, "Aren't you the god here? Now the base is on fire. How can you run away alone as a god? That's not good. You'd better stay. Kill him for me." Davis shouted, then turned around and ran to the helicopter. The bodyguards got the order and immediately rushed to Qin Haodong. But how could they be opponents of Hu Shaoxian and Qin Haodong? They were all put down to the ground a minute later, but the helicopter had already taken off. "Qin Haodong, you wait. I won't forgive you." In the loud roar of the helicopter, Davis roared at Qin Haodong. At this time, he hated this Huaxia man, who had ruined his decades of efforts. Hu Shaoxian reached out and the M16 appeared in her palm. She asked, "Do you want me to shoot him down?" Qin Haodong stopped her and said, "Don't worry, we want him alive. I still have something to ask him. But this guy is going to run away soon. If he runs out, it will be difficult to find him again." "Don't worry, he can't run away." Qin Haodong said confidently, "I set up a trap. Even a helicopter can't get out. Besides, I have an illusion to play with him." In mid-air, the pilot was skillfully operating the helicopter, but suddenly found that all the instruments were out of order. Only the descending one was still normal. Davis looked at the rising flames underground and shouted to the pilot, "What are you doing? Why don't you leave quickly?" "Boss, the helicopter is broken." While the pilot was talking, he suddenly found that several rockets had locked his plane. He was scared out of his wits and quickly landed the plane back to the ground. Chapter 354. Seeing Qin Haodong's smiling face reappear in front of him, Davis roared crazily, "Damn it, what are you doing? Hurry up and fly up. But at this time, the pilot didn't care so much. Before the plane stopped, he jumped out of the pilot's seat and ran for his life. Damn it, bastard, I'll kill you sooner or later. Davis cursed at the pilot's back. Because of the high technical content of the cockpit, the pilot was hired from outside at a high price. He was not a core member of their base, so his loyalty was not high. Dear Mr. Davis, I didn't expect to meet you again so soon. Chin Haodong's handsome face appeared in front of Davis again, with a playful smile on his face. Somebody. Davis shouted a few times, but the whole base was busy running for their lives. No one heard his roar at all, or even if someone heard it, they didn't want to pay attention. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, Davis licked his dry lips and said, Chin Haodong, now is not the time for us to make trouble for each other. We should find a way to escape together, or we will all be burned here later. Chin Haodong said, Mr. Davis, you think too much. Now only I can make trouble for you, and only you will be burned to death. I'm God here, and I can control everything. As he spoke, he raised his hand and waved. The flames around him immediately weakened a lot, and the fire that had swept here disappeared in an instant. As the controller of the 5 elements trigram fire formation, he did have the power of a god here. Davis was stunned, and at the same time, he also felt a burst of fear. What kind of existence was he provoking? Mr. Chin, listen to me. In fact, we don't need to fight to the death. Reconciliation is the best way. As long as you let me go today, I promise I won't make trouble for you in the future. Chin Haodong smiled and said, You kidnapped my daughter and just wanted to burn us together. Do you think there is any possibility of reconciliation between us? And I don't believe your words. I think only dead people are the most reliable. Although the handsome face in front of him was smiling brightly, Davis felt a deep killing intent. He quickly said, I can give you a lot of money. I've made a lot of money in Wilson Company over the years, more than you can imagine. I can give you all, as long as you let me go. The smile on Chin Haodong's face disappeared. He didn't want to talk nonsense anymore, so he directly used mind manipulating. Tell me, which organization do you belong to? What's your name? What is your purpose? My organization is called. A trace of confusion flashed across Davis's face, and then his expression became one of extreme pain. Just as he was about to say the name of the organization, blood suddenly flowed out of his 7 orifices, and he fell to the ground with a horrified expression. At the same time, Chin Haodong felt a huge spiritual fluctuation and couldn't help but frown. Hu Shaoxian asked, What happened? Did he commit suicide by taking poison? Chin Haodong squatted down to feel Davis's pulse. He shook his head and said, This is not suicide. He was killed by someone else. Someone else? Hu Shaoxian immediately glanced around vigilantly. There's no need to look. The person who did it is not here. Chin Haodong said, This is a very unique method called the lock of divine thoughts. In layman's terms, someone locked Davis's mind with divine thoughts. As long as he touched something, he would be killed immediately. Is there such a method? Hu Shaoxian was originally a master of mental strength. After hearing Chin Haodong's words, she immediately said in surprise, How strong is the mental strength to do this? Chin Haodong said, It's true. To use the lock of divine thoughts, one must have extremely strong mental strength. Measured by the cultivation of warriors, one must at least reach the supreme power realm. That is to say, there are masters in this field in that organization. Hu Shaoxian said with a dignified expression, What kind of organization is this? Why haven't we heard any news before? It seems that this matter must be reported to the Shenyuan Pavilion. Chin Haodong also realized the power of this evil sect. At least the person who could use the lock of divine thoughts was not someone he could compete with at present. Hu Shaoxian said, Hurry up. Be careful that his body will explode later. There is no genetic bomb in his body, but the lock of divine thoughts has been placed in his body. It should be because the level is relatively high. Qin Haodong stood up as he spoke, but suddenly his expression froze. He saw a touch of cyan on Davis's wrist, which seemed to be the corner of a tattoo. He squatted down again and raised his hand to tear off Davis's sleeve. There was indeed a clear tattoo on Davis's wrist. It was normal for Westerners to have tattoos, but this tattoo looked a little special. It was a man kneeling on the ground, making a gesture of worship. Although his face could not be seen clearly, he could feel his devout worship, as if he was worshipping a supreme person. Have you ever seen this kind of tattoo? Qin Haodong said to Hu Shaoxian. Hu Shaoxian shook her head and said, no. Is there any special meaning? Qin Haodong said, I don't know at the moment, but I always feel that this should be a special mark of that organization. If you want to investigate in the future, you can take it as a direction. After that, he tore off all Davis's clothes, leaving only a pair of shorts, but found no other suspicious places. Hu Shaoxian took out her mobile phone and took a picture of the tattoo on Davis's wrist. She said, we should go, or we will be in trouble when the police come. Qin Haodong nodded and the three of them walked out of the Devil Forest together. The 5 elements trigram fire formation was extremely good at controlling flames. It only burned the underground base in the middle of the open space, and did not hurt the surrounding forest. The gunmen who had been guarding around the forest saw the fire in the base and immediately went back to rescue. However, it was impossible for them to come out after they went back. They had all become funerary objects of the base. Qin Haodong started the car and the three of them quickly left. There was such a big noise here. Although it was far from the urban area, the police would definitely arrive later. Sure enough, they encountered countless police cars and fire trucks rushing to the suburbs along the way, but these headaches were left to the government of M country. It had nothing to do with them. Now that the little fellow had been rescued, there was no need for them to stay in M country anymore. They drove directly to the airport. Hu Shaoxian glanced at Qin Haodong and said with some resentment, why do I make such a big noise every time I'm with you? Then I have to go back and report it. Originally, she wanted to stay with Qin Haodong in Jiangnan City for a while, but whether it was the biochemical experimental base or the mysterious organization, she had to report it to the Shenyuan Pavilion in time, which meant that they would be separated soon. No wonder she was dissatisfied. Qin Haodong said with a little embarrassment, it's not my fault. I didn't want this to happen. Hu Shaoxian said, but bad things can also be turned into good things. This time, we destroyed an underground base and discovered the existence of the mysterious organization. I will go back and report it to the Shenyuan Pavilion. They will definitely give you great credit. Qin Haodong said, it doesn't matter. I'm just a little doctor. It has nothing to do with me whether you give me credit or not. Hu Shaoxian said, you are so outstanding. Do you really not want to consider joining our Shenyuan Pavilion? If you become a member of the Shenyuan Pavilion, you will have a lot of privileges and no longer be restricted in many aspects. Qin Haodong said with a smile, what do you mean by many aspects? Can I marry many wives? Hu Shaoxian rolled her eyes at him and said, what are you thinking about? Of course not. If I can't even do this little thing, then why should I join it? I won't consider it. You. Hu Shaoxian was so angry that she couldn't speak. The Shenyuan Pavilion was the dream of many ambitious young people. Countless people fought to join it, but the guy in front of her refused for such a reason. Soon they returned to the capital airport of M country and took the last plane back to Huaxia. After arriving in Jiangnan City, Hu Shaoxian directly flew back to the capital. Qin Haodong walked out of the airport with the little fellow. At the exit of the airport, Lin Momo was waiting there with a longing face, waiting to meet the two most important people in her life. Although she was only wearing business attire today, standing at the exit still gave her a feeling of being a crane among chickens. Whether it was her delicate face without any blemishes, her cold and aloof goddess demeanor, or her curvaceous sexy figure, she could firmly capture the eyes of other male creatures. Because Saber and others were around, no one dared to talk to her. But after a long time, there were still many people who were eager to make a move. They felt that they might be able to win the favor of the goddess since they were so outstanding. Just as these people were about to come forward, the little fellow ran out of the exit and threw herself into Lin Momo's arms like a cheerful bird. "Mama, I'm back." These people couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. It turned out that she was already taken, and her child was already so big. Alas! Good cabbages are all given to. Just when these people were about to add a sour sentence, they saw Qin Haodong coming out of the exit. They couldn't help but swallow the second half of the sentence. Looking at this handsome face, they couldn't associate him with a pig. Qin Haodong, Lin Momo, and the little fellow together, this family of three was simply the representative of the most beautiful people in Huaxia, which made others have no intention to complain. "Well, I wish you happiness," many people secretly thought in their hearts. Qin Haodong didn't know these people's mixed feelings. He got in the car with Lin Momo, and the three of them rushed to Tangmen Company. After a brief introduction of the situation in M country, Qin Haodong said, "How is it going at home?" Lin Momo said, "Since you held that press conference, all of Huaxia has begun to support traditional Chinese medicine. Those who originally wanted to abolish traditional Chinese medicine have shut up. Now the development of traditional Chinese medicine is very good." And with that video, the cases related to traditional Chinese medicine have been quickly solved, and Xiao Xiao has also been released. Speaking of this, she sighed and said, "It's just that Xiao Xiao is in a bit of trouble. She's in a very bad mood now. She was very depressed after knowing that Wang Desheng was dead. Now she's just staying at home alone and doesn't see anyone." Qin Haodong said, "Xiao Xiao was hurt by Wang Desheng like this. Don't you hate him at all?" Lin Momo said, "Xiao Xiao is stubborn. Otherwise, she wouldn't have waited for Wang Desheng for so many years. Although Wang Desheng has wronged her, he is the only man she has ever loved." Qin Haodong said, "Forget it, no one can help with this kind of thing. Let's go see her together when we have time." Lin Momo also knew that this was the only way, so she said, "During the days you were not at home, Director Pan came to see you several times. He just called me. He heard that you were coming back today, so he is waiting for you in our company now." Qin Haodong said in surprise, "Hasn't the matter of traditional Chinese medicine been solved? Why are you so anxious to see me?" Chapter 355. Lin Momo said, "Although the main problem has been solved, Director Pan still has a lot of things to do, such as the treatment costs and compensation for patients who have taken the treasure tablet for kidney. Although the ultimate responsibility for this matter lies with the Hall of Medical Fame, Wang Desheng is dead and Xiao Xiao is a victim. The authorities have to come forward to solve these problems." Qin Haodong nodded. There were indeed a lot of things to deal with. When he returned to Tangmen Company, Pan Gaofeng was already waiting in the reception room. When he saw Qin Haodong, he quickly said, "Dr. Qin, you're back. How are things going?" He only knew that Qin Haodong had gone to M country in a hurry, but he didn't know the details. "Everything's fine. It's all done." Qin Haodong didn't tell him much about the secrets of Wilson Company and the biochemical experimental base. He asked, "Director Pan, is there anything I can do for you?" Pan Gaofeng sighed and said, "Dr. Qin, I'm in big trouble now. I really need your help. Although the matter of the treasure tablet for kidney of the Hall of Medical Fame has been investigated and it was all Wang Desheng's conspiracy, after all, so many patients were hospitalized because of the treasure tablet for kidney. I have to solve the problem of treatment and subsequent compensation." Qin Haodong asked, "How many patients have taken the treasure tablet for kidney of the Hall of Medical Fame? How much will the subsequent compensation cost be?" "There are more than 3,000 patients in total. Jiangnan City accounts for about 2/3, and there are some in other cities and provinces. According to the compensation standard of 100,000 yuan per person, it will cost about 200 to 300 million yuan." After a pause, Pan Gaofeng said, "Thanks to your help. If it weren't for the great liver protecting pill, which can effectively treat liver damage, the compensation would be more." Qin Haodong said, although 300 million yuan is not a small number, the total assets of the Hall of Medical Fame are about 700 to 800 million yuan. After all, we can still afford it, right? Pan Gaofeng said, it's not as simple as it seems. I've asked someone to evaluate the assets of the Hall of Medical Fame. The official price is 750 million yuan. But after all, this is just an asset. All the liquid funds on their books have been taken away by Wang Desheng. Now Wang Desheng is dead, which means that they have no cash. Che Xiaoxiao is a legal person and also a victim. She can't do anything about the company's lack of money. And these patients are in a hurry to get compensation. Some of their families are really poor, and they need to take out the money immediately. Qin Haodong said, then we can cash the assets. If we auction the assets of the Hall of Medical Fame, we will have money to compensate. Pan Gaofeng said with a wry smile, it's not that easy. The auction of hundreds of millions of assets is not a matter of a day or two. Moreover, the most important asset of the Hall of Medical Fame is the traditional Chinese medicine factory. Now that the traditional Chinese medicine industry is in a slump, who will take over? Qin Haodong seemed to understand Pan Gaofeng's intention and said, Director Pan, do you mean that you want me to take over the Hall of Medical Fame's traditional Chinese medicine factory? Pan Gaofeng said with some embarrassment, Brother Qin, I have no choice. If you can buy the Hall of Medical Fame's traditional Chinese medicine factory, it will help me a lot. The most important thing is that you won't suffer a loss. The total assets of the Hall of Medical Fame are 750 million yuan. Now you only need 300 million yuan. You will definitely make a profit if you buy it. All right, I'll buy it. Qin Haodong agreed without hesitation. Originally, he had the idea of expanding the Tangmen company, but he had not found a suitable opportunity. Now that the opportunity had come to him, he would certainly not miss it. Buying the assets of the Hall of Medical Fame with 300 million yuan would not only not suffer a loss, but also make a lot of money. Great, Dr. Qin, thank you so much. You really helped me a lot this time. Pan Gaofeng was so happy that he almost jumped up. No wonder he had been under so much pressure recently. The patients' families had been chasing him for money, and the higher-ups had asked him to handle this matter well. In the middle, he had faced the difficulty of not being able to auction the assets of the Hall of Medical Fame. Now, Qin Haodong had finally made him see the hope of solving the problem. Dr. Qin, when do you think the 300 million yuan will be in place? To tell you the truth, I have been chased by the patients' families. I don't even dare to go to the unit. Qin Haodong said, as soon as the transfer of the assets is completed, I will ask Momo to transfer the money to you immediately. Pan Gaofeng said, well, I will start now and try to finish it today. Then he left the Tangmen company excitedly to deal with the auction of the assets of the Hall of Medical Fame. Back in the president's office, Qin Haodong told Lin Momo what had happened. Finally, he said, the total assets of the Hall of Medical Fame are between 700 and 800 million yuan. It is absolutely a big bargain for us to buy it with 300 million yuan. Moreover, there are so many medicinal materials in the warehouse of the Hall of Medical Fame. We can take them and directly produce them. I agree with this plan, Lin Momo said, but what are you going to do with the Hall of Medical Fame? Continue to produce the blood revival elixir? Qin Haodong said, one factory is enough to produce the blood revival elixir. The newly acquired factory can be used to produce the great liver protecting pill. We now have a production batch number for this medicine, and it has a good effect on treating liver diseases. We can continue to produce and sell it. The incident of the treasure tablet for kidney of the Hall of Medical Fame was a blessing in disguise for Tangmen Traditional Chinese Medicine Company. Otherwise, it would have taken at least a few months to apply for the approval of the great liver protecting pill. Now, this matter was specially handled, and it took less than a day to get the production batch number. Lin Momo nodded and said, I see. Qin Haodong took the pen and paper on the table, wrote a prescription, and handed it to Lin Momo. He said, this is the prescription of the 9 treasures kidney nourishing pill that I restored a few days ago. It completely makes up for the harm caused by the 9 treasures kidney nourishing pill to the liver. It also has an excellent effect on treating kidney diseases. You can take it for approval now. After getting the approval, we can quantify the production. Haodong, you are so great. Lin Momo excitedly kissed Qin Haodong on the cheek. Originally, she thought that Tangmen Traditional Chinese Medicine Company only had one blood revival elixir, which was too single. Now, with the Great Liver Protecting Pill and the 9 Treasures Kidney Nourishing Pill, the variety of products suddenly became rich. The key was that these 3 medicines had special effects. Any one of them was a heavyweight that could change the order of a market. After putting away the prescription, Lin Momo thought of something. The excitement on her face disappeared, and she said gloomily, Haodong, I just went to see Xiao Xiao. She is very bad now. She is much thinner than before, and she seems to be sick. She often feels nauseous and vomits. Oh. Qin Haodong said, I happen to be free now. Let's go and see her. If she is sick, I'll treat her. Since Qin Haodong was willing to treat her best friend, Lin Momo said gratefully, That's great, Haodong. I thank you for Xiao Xiao. How will you thank me? Just verbally? Verbally is fine, but you have to put it into action. Looking at Qin Haodong's smirk, Lin Momo knew what he meant. She couldn't help blushing. She punched him in the chest and said coquettishly, You're talking about this in broad daylight. I'll thank you in the evening. Che Xiao Xiao lived in an upscale community. It was a 3-bedroom, 1 living house, which was the only legacy left to her by her parents. They came to the door. Qin Haodong knocked on the door, but there was no response. Don't call. She's like glued to the bed now. She won't get up even if you break the door. Lin Momo said as she took out a key, opened the door directly, and walked into Che Xiao Xiao's bedroom. Qin Haodong glanced at Che Xiao Xiao, who was lying on the bed. Her hair was as messy as grass, and her face was haggard. Although her eyes were wide open, they were extremely empty, without any spirit. After they entered the door, there was still no response, as if they did not exist. This image was completely different from the first time he saw her. She did not look like a high-spirited, big-breasted girl at all. Xiao Xiao, Haodong and I are here to see you. Lin Momo came to the bed and saw that the porridge bowl next to it had not been touched. She couldn't help saying, Xiao Xiao, you can't always be like this. People have to eat. How can your body bear it if you don't eat? Che Xiao Xiao's body finally moved and she said, My parents are dead, and so is Deshang. What am I still alive for? What's the point? Qin Haodong had already understood that Che Xiao Xiao's biggest problem at this time was her heart. She had no desire to live now, and it was not an exaggeration to say that her heart was like dead ashes. Lin Momo advised her, Xiao Xiao, how can you think like this? People can't live for others. Besides, you still have me. Che Xiao Xiao said excitedly, You have a daughter, a father, and people who love you. You have people you love. What do I have? I have nothing. Let me just die. Lin Momo said, Xiao Xiao, you are so young. In the future, you can still find people who love you. You can also have children and live a happy life. Deshang is dead. I don't want to find anyone. Che Xiao Xiao turned her head to look at Qin Haodong and asked, I heard that Deshang died by your side. Can you tell me how he died? Qin Haodong sighed secretly. What a pitiful and hateful woman. She had been tricked by Wang Deshang, but she still remembered how he died. He did not hide it from her. He directly told her how Wang Deshang had encountered a car accident in M country a few years ago. He told her how he had been implanted with an artificial heart by Wilson and how he had been killed by an explosion. After listening, a bitter smile appeared on Che Xiao Xiao's stiff face. It turns out that Deshang didn't mean to lie to me. He was forced to do it. I said I love him so much. How could he lie to me? Qin Haodong knew that the girl could not stand the slightest blow, so he cooperated and said, yes, although Wang Desheng did a lot of wrong things, he was forced to do so. The mastermind is Wilson Company. Thank you. Che Xiaoxiao said, it's good to know that Desheng didn't mean to lie to me. I'll go to him now. Lin Momo said, Xiaoxiao, why are you so stupid? Don't kill yourself. Desheng is dead. What's the point of living? Che Xiaoxiao suddenly retched. She grabbed the trash can at the head of the bed and vomited for a long time, but nothing came out. Qin Haodong's heart skipped a beat. He reached out and put his hand on her wrist. Che Xiaoxiao lay down again and said weakly, you don't have to show me. I don't want to live anyway. It's better if I die. Although she said this, she seemed to have no strength to pull her hand back and let Qin Haodong feel her pulse. A minute later, Qin Haodong withdrew his right hand and said to Che Xiaoxiao with a smile, now you have a reason to live. You're pregnant. Lin Momo asked in surprise, what? Xiaoxiao is pregnant? Are you sure? Che Xiaoxiao's reaction was a little slow. A moment later, her eyes flashed. She struggled to sit up in bed, stared at Qin Haodong and asked, you're not lying to me, are you? Am I really pregnant with Desheng's child? Chapter 356. Qin Haodong said with a smile, don't forget what my nickname is. If I can't even feel the slippery pulse of pregnancy, how can I be called medical sage in the future? Oh my God, I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. Che Xiaoxiao was excited at first, and then she said with worry, no, I still think you're lying to me. It's only 10 days before I'm with Desheng. How can it be so fast? Did you see me vomiting just now, so you lied to me that I'm pregnant, didn't you? Qin Haodong said helplessly, I didn't lie to you. It's true. The reason why you have such a strong reaction is that you have a special constitution and are very sensitive. Secondly, because your mood has changed too much these days, it has intensified the pregnancy reaction. If you don't believe me, go to the hospital to do a pregnancy test, and you'll know the results soon. Seeing that Qin Haodong was very serious, Che Xiaoxiao asked again, are you sure you're not lying to me? Qin Haodong nodded and said again, no, you're really pregnant. Great, I'm pregnant. I have Desheng's child. Overwhelmed with emotion, Che Xiaoxiao held her lower abdomen with her hands and began to cry. Qin Haodong said, you're pregnant now. You can't be too emotional, or you'll hurt the fetus. Well, I got it. Che Xiaoxiao took Lin Momo's hand and said, Momo, I also have a child. I'm going to be a mother. If it's a boy, he must be as handsome as Desheng. If it's a girl, she must be as beautiful as Tang Tang. While speaking, her eyes were full of spirit. This was the power of motherhood. The child in her belly gave her the courage to live again. Lin Momo breathed a sigh of relief and said, well, your child must be very beautiful. After the excitement, Che Xiaoxiao slowly calmed down. She opened the drawer, took out a bank card and handed it to Qin Haodong. I know Desheng made a mistake and brought a lot of harm to those patients. There are 2 million in this card, which I've saved over the years as a manager in dreamy Jiangnan. Take it to compensate those people. It's my atonement for Desheng. Lin Momo quickly said, Xiaoxiao, how can you do that? You have to keep the money for yourself. You have to raise your children in the future. Qin Haodong said, yes, Xiaoxiao, there's something I haven't told you yet. I spent 300 million yuan to buy the Huaxia Hall of Medical Fame. This 300 million yuan will be used to compensate those patients, so you don't have to pay for it yourself. However, Che Xiaoxiao insisted, even so, we still have to add this money to compensate those people. Consider it my atonement for Desheng and doing good deeds for our children. Looking at her persistent eyes, Qin Haodong had no choice but to take the card. Lin Momo said, but Xiaoxiao, if you spend all the money, what about you and your child? It doesn't matter. Would I be afraid of starving if I were to follow you two tycoons? At this time, Che Xiaoxiao seemed to have returned to her usual sunny and generous personality. She said with a smile, "Besides, I have my own hands. I can work for you to earn money. Raising a child is not a problem. All right then, if you have any difficulties, just tell us." Lin Momo said again, "Xiaoxiao, Haodong and I want to buy the Hall of Medical Fame. Do you mind? If you do, we'll cancel the plan." Her eyes were extremely sincere. It could be seen that she cared about the affection between her and Che Xiaoxiao very much. Che Xiaoxiao said, "I don't mind. This is a good thing. I hope to deal with this matter as soon as possible. It can also be considered as atonement for Deshang." Lin Momo breathed a sigh of relief and said, "That's good. I can't manage such a big company by myself. If it's convenient for you, come and help me. You're more familiar with the situation of the Hall of Medical Fame than me." Che Xiaoxiao said with a smile, "Okay, I'll go to work for you tomorrow. I don't want a salary, as long as you take care of our meals." Lin Momo said, "How can you do that? If you help me, your salary will be double that of Dreamy Jiangnan. Suit yourself." Che Xiaoxiao said, "There's one thing I want to tell you too. Don't tell anyone that I'm pregnant with Deshang's child." "Why?" Lin Momo asked in surprise. "Because I don't want the Wang family to know that this child is my only family and my motivation to live. I don't want them to take him away." "Oh. We know. We'll definitely keep it a secret for you." Qin Haodong then thought of another question and said, "Who's the father of the child? How will you explain it to others?" "It's my own belly. I can give birth to whoever I want. Why do I have to explain it to others?" Che Xiaoxiao said with a playful smile, "If someone asks, I'll say it's yours. Anyway, you have so many women. You don't need me." Qin Haodong was speechless. What was this all about? Did he have the potential to be a cheap father? However, it could also be seen that Che Xiaoxiao had indeed walked out of the shadow of Wang Deshang. There was no need to worry about her safety anymore. In the next 2 days, Che Xiaoxiao walked out of the shadow, and Lin Momo had another assistant. Tangmen Traditional Chinese Medicine Company successfully completed the acquisition of the Huaxia Hall of Medical Fame. The traditional Chinese medicine factory of the Hall of Medical Fame also became a subsidiary of theirs, and began the quantitative production of the Great Liver Protecting Pill. When things were almost done, Qin Haodong and Lin Momo gave themselves a day off. The family of 3 went out to relax. Tang Tang was naturally the happiest. The little fellow was like a bird out of the cage. She had a great time. Lin Momo also felt a sense of freedom. She had been busy with the company's affairs over the years and rarely went out to play. Today, she rode the wooden horse and the Ferris wheel with the little fellow, which could be regarded as a kind of relaxation from the inside out. Near dusk, the little fellow said, "Papa, I'm hungry." "It doesn't matter if you're hungry. Let's go eat something delicious." As Qin Haodong spoke, a fragrance floated in front of them. It happened to be a snack street, so the family of 3 walked in. It was simply a paradise for food. There were all kinds of snacks, such as meatballs, kebabs, fried rice cakes, and fried squid. They all exuded a mouth-watering fragrance. The family of 3 happily wandered in front of various snack stalls. "Haodong, try this. It's crispy and crispy." Lin Momo handed a fragrant pastry to Qin Haodong. "No, I can't eat anymore." "You eat it." "I can't eat it either." The little fellow patted her round belly and said, "I want to eat it, but I'm too full to eat." Looking at her cute appearance, Qin Haodong and Lin Momo both laughed, and the little fellow also giggled. "Take it first. We'll eat it later." Lin Momo carried the fragrant pastry and the family of 3 walked out of the snack street. As soon as they reached the street, the little fellow suddenly pointed to the front and said, "Mama, look at that poor child." Qin Haodong and Lin Momo looked in the direction of her finger and saw a woman sitting on the street with a child in her arms. The woman looked about 30 years old. She was dressed in ordinary clothes. Although she was beautiful, she looked very simple without makeup. She was kneeling on the ground with a sad face. In her arms was a little boy about 1 or 2 years old. He looked sallow and very thin. His eyes were closed. It seemed that he was asleep. There was a piece of paper in front of the woman. It said that because the child had congenital heart disease, he needed to have an operation, but his family was poor and could not afford the operation. She hoped that a kind person could help to collect the money for the operation. Begging had gradually become a profession in Huaxia. Beggars used to be called beggars. When they begged, they only needed to give something to eat. But now it had completely changed. They only needed money, not food at all. And these people were best at pretending to be pitiful and winning people's sympathy. For example, the woman in front of them was kneeling on the ground with a sick child. Just a glance was enough to make people feel pity for them. "Mama, I'll help that child." Seeing the poor child, the little fellow suddenly became full of love. She took the fragrant pastry from Lin Momo's hand and ran to the woman. She said, "Auntie, this is fragrant pastry. It's delicious. Give it to the little brother." Seeing the fragrant pastry in the little fellow's hand, the woman's eyes flashed with imperceptible annoyance. Then she put on a grateful expression and said, "Thank you, child. He is still young and can't eat this kind of thing. He needs money for the operation now." Oh. The little fellow turned back, ran to Lin Momo and said, "Mama, the little brother is so pitiful. I want to give him money for the treatment." Seeing the little boy, Lin Momo also began to show maternal love. She also supported her daughter to give love. She took out her wallet and said, "How much do you think you should donate to the little brother?" The little fellow looked at the money in the wallet. There were about 2,000 or 3,000 yuan. She directly took it out and put it all in the small basin in front of the woman. Lin Momo put away the wallet and said, "Haodong, you see how kind our daughter is." Qin Haodong smiled bitterly. He was not like Lin Momo, who grew up in a honeypot since childhood and became a high and mighty female president after adulthood. He was very clear about the twists and turns of these folk beggars. It was obvious that they were cheating money. However, in order not to hurt the loving mother and daughter, he did not say anything. It was only a few thousand yuan, so he thought it was a donation. There were only some coins in the begging basin in front of the woman. The little fellow threw a lot of money in it and it became extremely dazzling, attracting the attention of countless people. "Thank you, little friend. Thank you so much." The woman was shocked at first, and then there was a flash of ecstasy in her eyes. Recently, it had become more and more difficult for them to do this business. Through online publicity and media publicity, people were not as gullible as before. Even if some people would still donate money to them, it was usually 10 or 8 yuan. Those who could donate 100 yuan could be regarded as rich. It had been many years since he had seen someone throw away a few thousand yuan like the little fellow. After reading the paper in front of the woman, Lin Momo came over and said, "Sister, if you believe me, my boyfriend's medical skills are very good. He can cure your child's illness. There is no need for surgery at all." "No. No need. I can get the surgery fee right away. There is no need to bother you." The woman put on a grateful expression and said, "You kind mother and daughter have helped us so much. You will be rewarded for your kindness in the future." Lin Momo said, "Sister, I really want to help you. There must be risks in the surgery for such a young child. My boyfriend's medical skills are really good. He is a Chinese medicine practitioner. He can help your child in other ways." The woman refused again and said, "No, really. My son has congenital heart disease. Chinese medicine can't cure him." The little fellow said, "Auntie, my papa is really good. He can cure any disease. Let him see your little brother." Chapter 357. The mother and the daughter talked with sincerity, which made the onlookers shake their heads. They thought it was okay that the child was not sensible, but why couldn't her mother see that the woman in front of her was a big liar? She was beautiful and elegant, but she was so gullible. The woman's face became more and more ugly. She put away her hypocritical smile and said with a sullen face, "No need. I'll have the operation when I have enough money. I don't need to see a Chinese medicine practitioner at all." She began to feel dissatisfied. Although Lin Momo and the little fellow had given her a lot of money, there were more and more onlookers now. Many people were pointing at her and saying she was a liar. How could she do business? These two women were so annoying. Why didn't they get out? Lin Momo didn't know what she was thinking. She still sincerely persuaded, "Sister, are you not willing to accept others' favors? I tell you, everything is for the child. The child's condition is the most important." At this time, an aunt next to her couldn't stand it anymore. She couldn't help but say, "Daughter, I live nearby. I see her begging with the child every day. In fact, she is a liar. She has been here for almost 4 or 5 months. A liar?" Lin Momo couldn't believe her ears. Although she was a mother of a child, she was the princess of the Lin family and the president of the group. She was completely ignorant about the life of the bottom of society. As a mother, she couldn't imagine anyone begging with their child. Impossible. They are so poor. How could they be a liar? Lin Momo shook her head and said, "Everyone has dignity. Who doesn't care about face?" If she hadn't been driven into a corner, how could she have knelt down and begged in the street? I guess she must have been forced to do so. She was defending the woman, but who knew that she would inadvertently stab the woman in the heart? "Who are you calling shameless?" The woman raised her hand and pointed at Lin Momo's nose. "Leave as soon as you give me the money. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Does it have anything to do with you whether I have dignity or not? Does it have anything to do with you whether I am shameless or not? Is it your business?" Lin Momo was stunned. She didn't expect this woman to change her attitude so quickly. She tried to explain, "Sister, I didn't mean that. I didn't say you were shameless." Unexpectedly, the woman still shouted, "What's so great about being rich? Don't talk endlessly here. Do you care whether I treat my child or not? Quickly take the little girl and get out of here. Don't pretend to be a good person here and hinder this old lady's business." Lin Momo was stunned on the spot. The woman's reaction had completely exceeded her worldview and made her at a loss for a moment. The little fellow took Lin Momo's hand and asked aggrievedly, "Mommy, why is Auntie angry? Did I do something wrong?" Looking at the wronged woman and daughter, Qin Haodong felt distressed. They were too kind and underestimated the sinister nature of human nature. He stepped forward, took the little fellow's hand and said, "Tang Tang, you did the right thing. We should be compassionate, but we must distinguish between the good and the bad. We should be compassionate to the good, but we should never be polite to the bad. For example, the woman in front of us is a bad person." The woman did not hear what Qin Haodong had said. She shouted beside him, "I say, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and take them away. She is very beautiful, but why is her IQ so low? You said that my woman has a low IQ and is stupid and rich, right? If it weren't for people like her, social garbage like you would have starved to death." Qin Haodong stood up, looked at the woman coldly and said, "It's people like you who consume everyone's love and make people lose trust. It's really shameless. Toy boy, who are you calling shameless? Believe it or not, I'll tear your mouth apart." The woman had completely put away her pitiful and simple appearance just now, like a female yiksha. Qin Haodong glanced at her disdainfully and said, "Since you have failed to live up to my daughter's kindness, take our money back. You don't deserve her love." "Are you kidding me? I'll give it back if you say so. What do you think I am?" Speaking of this, she no longer knelt and held the child. She directly stood up from the ground, put one hand on her waist and said, "Do you want to pick a fight? Let me tell you, I've never been afraid of anyone in all these years. I don't want to fight with you, but you hurt the kindness of my wife and daughter. They have good intentions, but you treated them like this. Now you must apologize to them. Apologize? Did you get kicked in the head by a donkey? How dare you ask me to apologize? The woman seemed to have heard a funny joke and said arrogantly, "Don't you know whose territory this is? I've been here for so long, and who have I apologized to? Last time, a guy who didn't know what was good for him gave me 50 yuan and wanted to take it back. As a result, I broke his leg." Speaking of this, she turned her head to the crowd and shouted, "Brothers, come here. Someone is coming to make trouble." After she shouted, 5 or 6 strong men immediately squeezed in from the outside and surrounded Qin Haodong and the other 2 in the middle like fiends. There were many begging groups like them in Huaxia, and they had gradually formed a certain scale. These people were organized and divided. Some were responsible for begging, and some were responsible for fighting. These people had been in Jiangnan City for a long time. Because it was a tourist city, there was a lot of traffic, so they didn't worry about being recognized for a long time. "It seems that you don't want to pay back the money?" Qin Haodong looked at the woman and sneered, "You're an organization, right? This child is not yours." Hearing this, the woman's expression changed slightly, and then she screamed, "Bullshit, if it's not mine, then it's yours? Give birth to one for me to see. Don't think that you're great because you have some money. I tell you, it's no use in front of me. Now take those 2 women and get out of here, or I'll make you pay." Qin Haodong said, "If you want us to go, give us back the money and apologize to my wife and daughter. You're really King sick. Your family of 3 is retarded. The money is in my pocket, and you want to get it back? Dream on." The woman said and waved to several strong men next to her, "This guy's IQ is too low. Teach him how to be a man." After the woman finished speaking, the leading man said to Qin Haodong, "Boy, keep your eyes open when you come out. There are some people you can't afford to provoke. Today I'll teach you a lesson." As he spoke, he raised his fist and smashed it toward Qin Haodong's face. In his opinion, there was no need for others to deal with such a weak gigolo. He could deal with him by himself. Qin Haodong raised his hand and grabbed the big man's wrist. He gently pulled it. Before the big man realized what was going on, there was a sharp pain on his shoulder, and then his arm hung down softly. For such a person, Qin Haodong would not be polite. He grabbed his other arm and dislocated his shoulder joint. Then he kicked him to the ground and dislocated all the joints of his legs. When he was done with all this, the other men came back to their senses and rushed over with a shout. But a minute later, these people also fell to the ground, exactly like the big man. All the joints of their limbs were dislocated, lying on the ground and crying. "Papa beat the bad guys. Papa is great." At this time, the little fellow had come out of her grievance, clapping her hands and shouting happily. "Good job, young man. You can't be polite to these evil people. These bastards have been running amok for a long time. They should have been dealt with long ago." It seemed that these people had already aroused public indignation. Seeing them being beaten by Qin Haodong, the surrounding people applauded Qin Haodong. The woman was stunned. In the past, when she was in trouble, as long as she called out these thugs, the other side immediately gave up. She did not expect to meet such a fierce person today. In the blink of an eye, her men were beaten like dogs. What do you want?" The woman's tone was much softer, and she was no longer arrogant and domineering. Qin Haodong glanced at her and said, "My daughter has just come into contact with society. She is so caring, but you have polluted her pure heart. You should love what you do. Beggars should have the consciousness of beggars. Beggars should rely on other people's pity and love to make a living. It's okay to cheat people, but you are so arrogant. Do the police know that you are so overbearing? What do you want?" The woman asked again. "I've already told you. Apologize to my daughter and wife, and then pay back the money." Nothing less. Don't go too far. The woman cried again, do you know who I am? Qin Haodong sneered and said, I don't know. Don't tell me you are the leader of the beggar gang. Are you Huang Ron? The woman cried, I'm not the leader of the beggar gang, but my husband is. He is in charge of the beggars in the streets near the government. If you really go too far, my husband will teach you a lesson. I'm just getting back what should be taken from my wife and daughter. Am I going too far? Qin Haodong looked at her and said, no matter who your husband is, you have to do what I say now, or I promise you won't be able to beg in the future. Toy boy, you're courting death. Wait and see. I'll call my husband now. The woman took out her mobile phone and dialed the number of the legendary leader of the beggar gang. Husband, bring some people here quickly. Someone is coming to make trouble. After the phone call, she turned back and shouted to Qin Haodong, boy, don't go if you have guts. My husband will teach you a lesson when he comes. Qin Haodong smiled slightly and did not speak. Since this woman was courting death, he did not mind removing the beggar gang, the malignant tumor of the city. 5 minutes later, a yellow Ferrari sports car drove over, followed by 2 vans. As soon as the door opened, a short and fat man got out of the Ferrari. He was wearing a famous brand suit and a tie, with an Omega watch on his hand. He looked like a successful man. Behind him, more than a dozen hooligans of different shapes and sizes came down, all of them holding steel pipes and knives in their hands, looking menacing. Who the fuck dares to bully my wife? Are you tired of living? The short and fat man came over, swearing. Afraid of the gangsters behind him, the onlookers quickly moved aside to make way for him. Seeing him, the woman immediately saw her savior. She quickly ran forward and said, husband, you're here. It's this guy who bullied me. He gave me money and wanted it back. He also beat our people. The short and fat man came to Qin Haodong and glanced at the people who were wailing on the ground. Then he asked, boy, where are you from? Qin Haodong shook his head secretly. Now the world had really changed. Beggars who used to live on others' kindness now drove sports cars and wore famous brands. They didn't look like beggars at all. He ignored the short and fat man and asked, are you the leader of the beggars? Chapter 358. You are a beggar. Your whole family are beggars. What the short and fat man hated most was being called a beggar. He shouted with his saliva flying, I run a company. I'm the chairman of the company. Do you understand? Chairman. Qin Haodong smiled disdainfully. Nowadays, even beggars were called chairman. He said, you run a company? Then tell me what kind of company you run. The short and fat man cried, a crowdfunding company. Do you understand? Crowdfunding. After he said that, the crowd burst into laughter. It was really a novel name. Beggars became crowdfunding. The short and fat man also knew that what he said was a little shameless. A touch of embarrassment flashed across his face. He pointed to Qin Haodong and said, don't talk nonsense. Today you bullied my wife and beat my brother. You must pay for it, or I'll teach you a lesson. Qin Haodong said, my daughter came here to show her love, but she met you liars. Now give me the money and apologize, or I'll teach you a lesson. Boy, I see that you're here to make trouble today. The short and fat man waved his hand behind him and said, brothers, show him a lesson. First, break the legs of this gigolo boy, and then scratch the faces of those 2 women. Let them know the consequences of offending us. After receiving his order, the gangsters swarmed up and surrounded Qin Haodong and the other 2. The onlookers were very sympathetic to Qin Haodong. Although they knew that he knew some martial arts, it was impossible for him to beat so many gangsters alone. However, sympathy was sympathy. After all, they were ordinary people. Seeing these fierce gangsters, they could only retreat. Occasionally, 2 people hid nearby and secretly called the police. Beat them hard for me. The short and fat man shouted arrogantly. A gangster waved a knife in his hand and rushed to Qin Haodong. Suddenly, his knife was in Qin Haodong's hand. Then a huge foot appeared in front of him and he was kicked away. The other gangsters saw that their companions were at a disadvantage and rushed over together. However, these people were no match for Qin Haodong. They were knocked down in a few seconds. A gangster saw how powerful Qin Haodong was, so he sneakily approached Lin Momo and smashed her head with a steel pipe. There was a burst of exclamations from the crowd, making everyone think that this beautiful woman was about to die. Suddenly, a cold light flashed, and a dagger pierced through the hooligan's arm. The steel pipe fell to the ground with a clang. Of course, it was Qin Haodong who did it. His mind had always been on Lin Momo and the little fellow. How could he let them be hurt by the gangsters? After piercing the hooligan's arm with the dagger, he kicked the hooligan more than 10 meters away. The hooligan crashed into the lamppost next to him and spat out mouthfuls of blood. The chunky man was dumbfounded. Before he could close his mouth, all of his men had been knocked to the ground. Qin Haodong came to him and said, "How is it? Have you thought it through? Do you want to return the money and apologize?" The short and fat man took 2 steps back and shouted nervously, "Don't mess around. I'm telling you, hundreds of my men are coming this way. You talk too much nonsense." Qin Haodong raised his hand and slapped him in the face. The short and fat man spun a few times on the spot. His cheeks were swollen and his teeth fell to the ground. "Have you thought it through? Do you want to return the money and apologize?" I have. The short and fat man knew that he had met a tough guy today, so he turned to the woman and shouted, "Are you stupid? Hurry up and return the money and apologize." At this time, he hated this woman to the core. She could have provoked anyone, but she had provoked such a powerful person. I'm sorry," the woman said pitifully. In her eyes, the short and fat man was omnipotent, but now he was subdued by Qin Haodong, which made her feel fear immediately. Qin Haodong said coldly, "Send the money back to my daughter." I'll return it now." The woman quickly stuffed the stack of bills into the little fellow's hand. "Tell everyone that you're a liar." Looking at the people around, the woman did not say anything. Qin Haodong did not speak. He raised his hand and slapped the short and fat man in the face again. With a crisp sound, the man was directly knocked to the ground. The short and fat man covered his swollen cheek and scolded the woman, "Damn, are you stupid? We're liars. What's there to be embarrassed about? Just say it." Seeing the man's fierce eyes, the woman trembled with fear and quickly cried, "I'm sorry, I'm a liar. I lied to everyone. Show some sincerity." The short and fat man was afraid that Qin Haodong would not be satisfied and hit him again, so he roared, "I'm sorry, I lied to everyone." The woman knelt on the ground with the child in her arms. The short and fat man looked up at Qin Haodong and said, "Brother, no, sir, is it okay now?" Qin Haodong nodded and said, "Barely. Let her get up." Thank you. The woman finally breathed a sigh of relief and stood up from the ground with the child in her arms. The short and fat man said, "Sir, the money has been returned and the apology has been received. Can we go now?" He had made up his mind that as long as he passed today, he would leave Jiangnan City immediately and would never see the man in front of him again. "Not yet." Qin Haodong said to the woman, "Bring me the child." This is not appropriate," the woman said in a panic. The short and fat man also said, "Sir, the child is too young and ignorant. It would be bad if he pees on you." Qin Haodong ignored him and shouted to the woman again, "I told you to bring the child here." Well. The woman glanced at the short and fat man and tremblingly carried the child to Qin Haodong. Qin Haodong took the child. Although there was such a big noise outside, the child was still sleeping and there was no sign of him waking up. He opened the quilt and revealed the child's whole body. Although the child looked almost 2 years old, he was extremely thin and his face was gray. It was obvious that he had been malnourished for a long time. His small arms and legs were only a little thicker than an adult's thumb. He looked very pitiful. The little fellow ran over, looked at the child and said, "Papa, the little brother is so pitiful." Chin Haodong took the child's little hand and felt his pulse. Then he said in a sharp voice, "What did you give the child?" The woman said in a low voice, "No, nothing, just milk powder." Chin Haodong lifted his leg and kicked the woman to the ground. He said angrily, "Did you feed the child sleeping pills?" He had already seen that the woman did not give the child enough to eat at all. In order to prevent the child from crying, she put sleeping pills in his milk, which was the reason why the child had not woken up. If such a young child were to be fed sleeping pills for a long period of time, it would affect the brain. In serious cases, it could even cause dementia. After listening to his words, the onlookers understood why the child was so honest and had been sleeping. It turned out that he had been fed sleeping pills. Damn it, feeding such a young child sleeping pills. Is this woman crazy? What kind of mother is this? She actually fed her own child medicine. I don't think this is her child at all. The child must have been stolen. I've seen it on the news. In order to gain people's sympathy, these beggars steal children and pretend to be pitiful. It makes sense. Even a vicious tiger will not eat its cubs. Who can be so cruel to their own child? She must have stolen the child. In the midst of the condemnation, the woman got up tremblingly. Chin Haodong asked in a cold voice, "Tell me the truth, did you steal the child?" He had already seen that the child was not the same as the squat man and the woman. It was definitely not their child. The only thing he needed to determine was how the child came about. The woman opened her mouth, but did not dare to say anything. She turned her head and looked at the squat man next to her. Seeing that things were not going well, the squat man turned his head and was about to slip away, but he was kicked to the ground by Chin Haodong. "Tell me, where did this child come from?" Chin Haodong asked, stepping on his chest. "My son, this is my son," the squat man said. "Nonsense, who would starve their son like this? It's obvious that the child hasn't eaten for a long time. It's obvious that he's lying. Who would feed their child sleeping pills?" None of the onlookers believed that the child was the squat man's son. Did you hear that? No one believes you at all. Tell me quickly, where did this child come from? Chin Haodong asked again. "It's my son, it's really my son." The squat man knew very well that he could admit other things, but child abduction was a big crime, and he might be beheaded, so he refused to tell the truth. Chin Haodong really didn't want to talk nonsense with him, so he directly used mind manipulating. "Tell me the truth, where did this child come from?" There was a flash of confusion in the squat man's eyes, and he said, "I sent someone to steal him." Soon, the guy told all the facts of the crime clearly. Their gang made a living by begging and called themselves the Beggar Gang. The squat man was called the gang leader, and he had dozens of people under him. These people had a clear division of labor. Some begged everywhere to cheat money, some stole things, and some acted as thugs. While begging, they also did a lot of evil things. For example, they captured some homeless people and crippled them. Then, they put them in crowded places and pretended to be pitiful. While they consumed people's sympathy, they also earned a lot of money. Similarly, they would do everything possible to steal children, because children were easier to gain sympathy than adults. For example, the child in the woman's arms was stolen from someone else's house. Chin Haodong asked again, "Why did you give this child sleeping pills?" The squat man said, "In order to save costs. Nowadays, children's milk powder is so expensive, so we can save as much as we can. Besides, it's easier to make money if he's thin. If he's fat and white, he won't be pitiful. But the child is very annoying because he doesn't have enough to eat. He always cries, so my wife thought of a way to give him sleeping pills, so that he's much more obedient." "Bastard, How can you treat a child like this, bastard? How dare you steal other people's children? You're worse than animals. In the future, you won't even have a child of your own. Yen. Kill him. Kill these harmful things. While they were talking, people couldn't control their anger. They picked up the bricks, stones, wine bottles and other garbage on the side of the road and threw them at the squat man and the woman. For a moment, the two men were beaten black and blue, and their heads were bleeding. They screamed like pigs being slaughtered. 5 minutes later, the two men were beaten to death. They were miserable. If it went on like this, they would definitely be killed by the angry people. It would be troublesome to kill people. Chin Haodong was about to stop them when a siren sounded and 2 police cars drove over. Nalan Wuxia got out of the car, glanced at the 2 dying guys, and asked Chin Haodong, "What's going on?" Chapter 359. She was on duty today. She had just received a report that there was a large-scale fight here. When she arrived, she found the ground full of gangsters and 2 beaten men and women. Chin Haodong was standing next to them with the child in his arms. Chin Haodong said, "This is a criminal gang. They steal children for begging and other crimes." The little fellow came over, took Nalan Wuxia's hand and said, "Third mom, these are bad people. They don't give little brother food, but they also give him medicine. You must catch them." Nalan Wuxia was embarrassed. Although the little fellow often called her third mom, Lin Momo was not there at that time. Now her biological mother was by her side, so she was a little embarrassed. Lin Momo's expression didn't change much. She came over and said, "Sister Nalan, I've recorded what happened just now. I'll send the video to you now." Then she sent the video of the short and fat man confessing to the crime to Nalan Wuxia. "Thank you, Sister Momo." Nalan Wuxia and Lin Momo both knew each other's existence, but they were still a little nervous when they were together. She turned around and waved to the police behind her. "Take all these people back to the police station for interrogation. Comrade police, these beasts must be punished. It's best to let them stay in prison for a long time. Prison alone can't make up for their sins. The 2 leaders should be shot for 5 minutes. This kind of scum should be sentenced to death. Otherwise, they will harm ordinary people. People express their dissatisfaction in their hearts." At this time, Chin Haodong put the child on the bench next to him, and then carefully pricked him with a few silver needles. He used green with genuine qi to help him sort out the damaged meridians. After a few minutes, the child opened his eyes and began to cry. Someone in the crowd said, "This child must be hungry. Human traffickers are really evil. These damn human traffickers let the child help them make money, but they don't let the child eat enough. They don't even give the child money for milk powder." At this time, a middle-aged woman came over and handed a bottle to him. She said, "Young man, this is the milk powder I brought for my son. It's still hot. Give some to the child." Lin Momo was more experienced in taking care of children. She took the bottle and tested the temperature, then put it into the child's mouth. The child was indeed starving. When he felt the pacifier, he immediately gobbled it up. Soon, he finished all the milk in the bottle. Then, he opened his big black eyes and looked around curiously. Chin Haodong said to Nalan Wuxia, "This child was stolen by human traffickers. I'll leave him to you. Try to find his biological parents as soon as possible." "All right, I understand." Nalan Wuxia took the child and turned to get into the police car. At this time, the chunky man and his hooligans had been taken away by the police. The onlookers also dispersed in 2s and 3s. Chin Haodong's family of 3 strolled forward. Lin Momo looked solemn and thoughtful. Chin Haodong said, "What? Are you still thinking about that?" Lin Momo stopped and said, "I just don't understand. They have hands and feet and can do anything. Why don't they work hard by themselves? Why are they willing to kneel on the ground and exchange their dignity for charity? Is their dignity so worthless?" Qin Haodong said, in fact, it's easy to understand. There are all kinds of birds in a big mountain. In such a big world, there are always people who love ease and hate work. They want to get things without working because they are lazy. Dignity and face are important to us, but they are worthless in their eyes. The little fellow seemed to understand their conversation and asked, Papa, did they really steal that little brother? Qin Haodong said, yes, there are always some bad people in this world who like to steal children. So you must be careful in the future. Don't eat strangers' food, let alone go with strangers. The little fellow nodded hard and said, yes. I'm the most obedient. Lin Momo said, these human traffickers really deserve to be cut into pieces. They destroy several families by stealing a child. They don't even treat the child as a human being and don't even give him enough to eat. Qin Haodong said, there is no other way. This situation is not uncommon in the whole country. These people take advantage of people's sympathy for children, so they steal children as begging tools. Some even disable them directly, making them more pitiful and winning people's sympathy. So, sometimes, when we give out love, we must open our eyes wide. Otherwise, we will be helping those bad people. Lin Momo nodded and said, I see. What happened today not only taught the little fellow, but also taught Lin Momo, who was usually high and mighty, a lesson, so that she had a new understanding of the darkness at the bottom of the society. After this incident, the three of them lost interest in playing. They directly got in the car and went back to Lin's villa. Just after dinner, Qin Haodong's phone rang. It was Long Haisheng. After pressing the answer button, Qin Haodong said, Brother Long, what's the matter? He and Long Haisheng got to know each other through fighting. Although Long Haisheng was in the underworld, he could always keep the bottom line, which made Qin Haodong respect him very much. At the same time, Qin Haodong had a good impression of him. Brother Qin, can you come to my place? Dafei was injured by someone and I want you to take a look at him. Dafei was injured? Well, I'm coming now. Qin Haodong was slightly surprised. Dafei was the #1 warrior under Long Haisheng, and his cultivation was quite strong. In addition, Jiangnan City was Long Haisheng's territory. How could he be injured? What was the background of the other party? After hanging up the phone, he drove directly to Long Haisheng's home. There were many bodyguards at the door with guns and they looked nervous. However, these people all knew Qin Haodong and let him go immediately when they saw him. After entering the door, he saw Dafei, who was as strong as an ox, lying on the bed. His face was pale, his left arm had been completely broken, and the right side of his chest was slightly collapsed. It seemed that his sternum was also broken. He coughed from time to time and spat out a lot of blood foam. Seeing Qin Haodong enter the door, Long Haisheng hurriedly greeted him and said, Brother Qin, you're here. Take a look at Dafei. Qin Haodong nodded and came to Dafei's bedside. He reached out and felt his pulse. Seeing Qin Haodong, Dafei wanted to say something, but a big mouthful of blood came out of his mouth. Don't talk. Don't worry. I'm here. You can't die even if you want to. Qin Haodong said as he took out a healing elixir and put it into his mouth. The elixir melted in his mouth. Soon Dafei felt a coolness in his chest. The pain was relieved a lot and he stopped coughing blood. Qin Haodong reached out and pulled open Dafei's clothes. He saw a huge black palm print on his chest. He frowned. This was the black sand palm. Long Haisheng said nervously, Brother Qin, how is Dafei? I don't dare to send him to the hospital because he is so badly injured. I can only ask you to help him. Indeed, when he saw Dafei's miserable appearance, his first thought was that only Qin Haodong could save him. Don't worry. It's no big deal. Qin Haodong said as he took out the needle bag and began to treat Dafei. Soon, more than 20 silver needles were inserted into the major acupuncture points on his chest. Next, he connected Dafei's broken sternum and arm. 20 minutes later, he took out the silver needles on his chest. Well, stay in bed for 3 days. Don't fight with others for 10 days. Then you'll be fine. Dr. Qin, thank you for saving my life. Dafei said gratefully. He knew very well how badly he was injured. At that moment, he almost touched the breath of death. If Qin Haodong hadn't helped him, he would have been dead. It's nothing. Have a good rest. Qin Haodong turned back and said to Long Haisheng, Brother Long, what happened? Who hurt Dafei? From the palm on Dafei's chest, he could preliminarily judge that the opponent's cultivation had entered the threshold of the internal strength. But there were not many people with such cultivation in Jiangnan City. How could Long Haisheng provoke such a person? Long Haisheng sighed and said, It's a long story. Brother Qin, do you remember the killer we met at Ouyang Shanshan's concert last time? Qin Haodong said, Of course I remember. Does it have anything to do with the killer? Long Haisheng said, Later, after interrogation, we knew that the killer came from Jiangbei City. Jiangnan and Jiangbei are across the river. The underworld boss of Jiangbei City is called Li Ao. Although he and I both lead the underground underworld, our styles of doing things are completely different. I have a bottom line in doing things. But Li Ao doesn't. As long as there are enough benefits, he can do anything. For example, drug dealing. Drugs are not allowed in the underworld in Jiangnan City. Li Ao wanted to make a fortune from drugs and expand the Jiangbei market. He even wanted to bring drugs into Jiangnan City. Since I refused, there was an assassination attempt last time. Qin Haodong said, Did he send a killer again this time? Not a killer, but a master. Long Haisheng said, After the last failure, Li Ao behaved for a long time, but this time he found a master from nowhere. This man is called Chen Hu. He is very arrogant and cruel. When Chen Hu came to Jiangnan City, he first sent me a letter of challenge. He clearly told me that he would smash 3 of my places every day at 10 a.m., 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. He clearly marked the places to smash at each time and threatened to beat me until I gave in and left Jiangnan City. Qin Haodong frowned and said, He is really arrogant. I thought so at first, but later I found that this guy is really capable. Long Haisheng sighed and said, I sent 30 brothers to the first place, but no one could survive one move from him. The second place is at 4:00 this afternoon. I just sent Dafei there. As you can see, Dafei was defeated by him in 3 moves. He almost lost his life, and the place was smashed to pieces by him. Qin Haodong said, Brother Long, have you ever thought of calling the police? No matter how arrogant he is, he won't dare to fight against the authorities. Long Haisheng shook his head and said, Brother Qin, you don't know the rules of our underworld. I, Long Haisheng, am the number 1 figure in the underworld, and the fight between me and Li Ao is also a fight of the underworld. If I turn to the authorities for help, I will be laughed at by the whole underground world. Even if Chen Hu is arrested by the police, I will not be able to stand in Jiangnan City in the future. Li Ao had also calculated this point, so he sent Chen Hu alone. Qin Haodong nodded and said, In this case, Brother Long, I will go with you at 9 p.m. to kill Li Hu. On the one hand, he respected Long Haisheng's courage, and on the other hand, he was very resistant to drugs, so he decided to help Long Haisheng. Chapter 360. As soon as he finished speaking, Dafei hurriedly cried, Dr. Qin, you can't do that. You're no match for Li Hu. He had once fought with Qin Haodong and felt that Qin Haodong was inferior to Li Hu. But he didn't know that Qin Haodong had just reached the 9th level of overt power at that time. Now he had reached the 9th level of covert power, which meant that he was half a step into the ranks of supreme power. Long Haisheng also said, Yes, Brother Qin, although you're good at martial arts, you're a doctor after all. You'd better stay away from this kind of fighting and killing. If you're hurt, I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life. And you don't have to worry about Li Hu. I, Long Haisheng, have some connections over the years. If Li Ao can invite a master, so can I. I have sent someone to Rongwei Martial Arts Club in the provincial capital to invite someone. He should arrive soon. Qin Haodong knew that both of them meant well. He was not a stubborn person, so he didn't say anything. It would be best if the people from the Rongwei Martial Arts Club could solve the problem. Just then, a bodyguard ran in from outside and said, "Boss, Master Yi from the Rongwei Martial Arts Club is here." Hearing that the person he invited was here, Long Haixing suddenly became spirited and led his men out to greet him. Qin Haodong sat there without moving. A martial artist from a martial arts club was not worthy of his greeting in person. Soon, there was the sound of messy footsteps. Long Haixing led a middle-aged man into the room. The middle-aged man was about 50 years old, wearing a snow-white training suit. He raised his chin, raised his nose, and looked arrogant. Behind him were two young men in their 30s, who also had unruly looks on their faces. The middle-aged man was Yi Kai, the owner of the Rongwei Martial Arts Club in the provincial capital. The two young men were his apprentices, Zhou Wen and Zhou Wu. The Rongwei Martial Arts Club was definitely one of the top 3 martial arts clubs in the provincial capital. Yi Kai's cultivation had also reached the 5th level of covert power. Even his 2 apprentices had also entered the threshold of covert power. That was why he was so arrogant and looked down on others. After entering the door, Yi Kai saw Qin Haodong sitting there without moving. He could not help but frown. In his opinion, a person like him should be welcomed by Long Haixing's whole family, but this young man not only did not welcome him, but also did not say anything when he saw him. Having controlled the underground world for decades, Long Haixing was definitely a flexible person. Although he was also very dissatisfied with Yi Kai's arrogance in his heart, he did not show it at all since he needed help from Yi Kai. At this moment, he saw Yi Kai's mood, so he stepped forward and said, "Master Yi, this is my brother Qin Haodong. He's here to treat my men." Hearing that Qin Haodong was just a doctor, and Yi Kai did not feel the aura of a warrior from Qin Haodong, he snorted and said nothing. After they sat down, Long Haixing asked someone to make tea, and then said, "Master Yi, Li Hu's cultivation is very high, and he is cruel. This time, we have to rely on Master Yi." Before Yi Kai could speak, Zhou Wen said, "Don't worry, Boss Long. My master is a great master at the 5th level of covert power. He is invincible in all the martial arts clubs in the provincial city. As long as he takes action, Li Hu is nothing." Long Haixing nodded and said, "That's great." He had heard of Yi Kai's name for a long time, otherwise he would not have gone through so much trouble to invite him to Jiangnan City. Although this man was arrogant, he did have the capital to be arrogant, and should be able to suppress Li Hu. Yi Kai picked up the teacup and took a sip leisurely. Then he said, "Mr. Long, tell me about him, so that I can know myself and my enemy." Long Haixing said, "The opponent's cultivation is very high. He has smashed my 2 places in succession. No one here is his opponent. Dafei is the best among my subordinates, but he was injured after only 3 moves." Yi Kai turned his head and glanced at Dafei, who was lying in bed, with a flash of disdain in his eyes. He asked, "You haven't stepped into the covert power, have you?" Dafei said, "The 8th level of overt power is still far from the covert power." "How did he defeat you?" Yi Kai asked again. "We first hit each other with our palms. Li Hu's cultivation was profound, so he directly shook me back. The second move broke my arm, and the third move hit my chest." Although it was not a glorious defeat, Dafei answered in detail in order to help Long Haixing win. After listening to him, Yi Kai said contemptuously, "You're still full of energy after being hit in the chest. It seems that Li Hu is just a so-so. Even if my 2 disciples had slapped you, I'm afraid you'd be half dead by now." "Mr. Yi, it's not like that." Dafei wanted to explain that he was on the verge of death, and it was Qin Haodong who saved him, so he was full of energy. However, Yi Kai did not want to listen at all. He directly waved his hand and interrupted him. "Forget it. I've already done it. Let's talk about the price of cooperation." He turned to look at Long Haisheng and said, "We will help you solve this, Li Hu, but you have to give us 10 million as a reward." Qin Haodong had just taken a sip of tea, but when he heard this, he couldn't help but spit it out. He thought that this guy was really asking for an exorbitant price. A warrior at the 5th level of covert power, with 2 disciples who had just reached the 1st level of covert power, dared to ask for 10 million without even seeing each other's faces or making any contribution. This was much faster than robbing. Zhou Wen, who was sitting opposite Qin Haodong, was sprayed with tea. He immediately stood up and said angrily, "What are you doing?" Qin Haodong put down the teacup and said, "Nothing, I was just scared by 10 million. You 3, you haven't even stretched out a finger. Isn't it a little inappropriate for you to ask for 10 million? Zhou Wu said, "You're just a little doctor. I can see that you haven't seen much of the world. My master is a great master at the 5th level of covert power, the head of Rongwei Martial Arts Club. There are many people who want to ask him for help. 10 million is absolutely reasonable." After that, he saw that Qin Haodong didn't care, so he said, "It's useless to tell you. You don't know what a master of covert power is. I'll tell you today." Perhaps to convince Qin Haodong, or perhaps to make Long Haisheng willingly pay 10 million as a reward, Zhou Wu began to talk incessantly. From the current situation, the opponent is a master who has entered the threshold of covert power. If it weren't for us, you wouldn't be able to defeat him, no matter how many people you have here. The strength of a warrior of covert power is beyond your imagination. When his cultivation reaches the level of covert power, even if an ordinary person points a gun at him, he can kill him before he can shoot. Speaking of this, it seemed that to confirm his statement, he raised his hand and pressed it gently on the table next to him. When he took his hand back, there was a clear palm print on the hard mahogany tea table. It was about half an inch deep, and the palm lines were clearly visible. Long Haisheng couldn't help but widen his eyes. He was very clear about the hardness of his mahogany tea table. He said incredulously, "This is internal strength?" Zhou Wu said proudly, "Of course, this can only be done by a master of internal strength. But it's not easy to reach the level of internal strength. Without the guidance of a famous teacher, you can't touch the threshold of internal strength even if you practice for decades." Qin Haodong didn't take his move seriously. This was just the performance of the level of internal strength. If he had made a move, he could have shaken the table into powder silently, instead of leaving a palm print. Long Haisheng said excitedly, "It seems that with the 3 masters, we can definitely defeat Li Hu." Ye Kai said proudly, "Of course, it's because of this confidence that I dare to ask for a reward of 10 million yuan. And I have a rule that I always take the money before I make a move." In his view, Long Haisheng would definitely agree to his conditions. Sure enough, in the face of a formidable enemy, Long Haisheng did not hesitate at all. He directly wrote a check of 10 million yuan and sent it to Ye Kai. As soon as Ye Kai took the check in his hand, he heard Qin Haodong say, "Master Yi, if you take the money but can't defeat Li Hu, should there be any explanation?" At this time, Zhou Wen wiped the water stains on his body and said discontentedly, "Don't talk nonsense if you don't know martial arts. My master has reached the 5th level of covert power. No one in Jiangnan City can reach this level. How can he not defeat Li Hu?" Qin Haodong was not anxious. He said with a smile, "I don't know martial arts. I'm just saying if the 3 of you are no match for Li Hu, then what?" Zhou Wu said, "That's impossible." Qin Haodong said, "There's nothing absolute in this world. What if the 3 of you fail?" Ye Kai turned his head and glanced at Long Haisheng. He was a little dissatisfied that Qin Haodong, a little doctor, had ignored him. But he still snorted and said, "If we can't defeat Li Hu, we won't take a penny." Qin Haodong said with a smile, "Master Yi, it doesn't seem appropriate." Seeing that Qin Haodong and Ye Kai had a verbal conflict, Long Haisheng wanted to stop them. But after thinking about it, he thought that Qin Haodong was not an impulsive person. Since he did this, there must be a reason. Ye Kai said with a cold face, "What else do you want?" Master Yi, don't be angry. Qin Haodong said with a smile, normally, you should wait to defeat Li Hu before collecting the money. Since you charge first, you have to bear a certain risk. Big Brother Long trusts you so much. If you really lose to Li Hu, Big Brother Long's business will be ruined. At that time, whether it's reputation or finances, you will suffer a huge loss. Master Yi, shouldn't you give some compensation? Boy, do you know how to talk? You keep saying that my master will lose, and keep saying that my master will lose. Are you asking for a beating? Zhou Wen could no longer control his anger. He stood up and was about to fight Qin Haodong. Well, Zhou Wen, he is an ordinary person after all. He doesn't know anything. Ye Kai stopped Zhou Wen. His apprentice was a master of covert power, a famous figure in the whole of Jiangnan. It was really shameful to fight a little doctor. He put the check in his hand on the table, turned to Long Haixing and said, since Mr. Long doesn't trust me, then we'll leave. Well, Long Haixing was about to ask him to stay, but he was stopped by Qin Haodong. He said to Ye Kai, Master Yi, if you leave now, aren't you afraid that someone will say that you were scared away by Li Hu? Ye Kai was about to leave, but he immediately stopped when he heard Qin Haodong's words. It was true. If he quit now, it would inevitably bring a very bad influence to Rongwei Martial Arts Club, and his reputation would also be damaged. He turned back and said, well, as you said, if I really lose to Li Hu, 10 million will be returned, and 10 million will be given to Mr. Long as compensation. Chapter 361. Ye Kai had always been arrogant and rarely paid attention to others. Moreover, he had collected information about Li Hu before he came. He had never heard of such a person in the whole Huaxia. Presumably, Li Hu's kung fu was not very high, so he agreed immediately. Long Haixing said, it's almost time. Let's wait for Li Hu together. After that, they left the room and rushed to the Dynasty nightclub together. Qin Haodong followed the crowd. He was not very optimistic about the arrogant master and disciple. If Ye Kai was really defeated, he could help Long Haixing. However, in the eyes of others, he was just going to watch the fun. The Dynasty nightclub was one of the top entertainment places in Jiangnan City and also the pillar of Long Haixing's industry, so Li Hu set it as the third target. It was close to 9 p.m. In the past, the nightclub would have been full of people at this time. However, today there was a sign on the door that said, closed, which looked much more depressed than before. The hall of the Dynasty nightclub was very spacious, which could accommodate hundreds of people on weekdays. At this time, it looked very empty. Long Haixing invited Ye Kai and his disciple to sit down in the hall. He asked someone to make tea and waited quietly for Li Hu's arrival. Ye Kai took a sip of tea and said, Mr. Long, ask your people to guard the door later. Don't let Li Hu escape. Zhou Wen said, Master, with you around, how can he escape? Ye Kai's face flashed with a touch of pride and said, it's better to be careful. Although I'm sure I can win, Li Hu is also a warrior of covert power. It's completely possible for him to escape with injury. If he really escapes, it will be troublesome later. We can't always stay in Jiangnan City. Long Haixing nodded. As a gangster, he did not bet all his treasures on Ye Kai and his disciple. At the same time, he also prepared 2 very good gunmen. In addition, there were dozens of people guarding the place. As long as Ye Kai could defeat Li Hu, he was not afraid that he could escape. At 9 p.m., Ye Kai put the teacup in his hand on the table and said, here he comes. Li Hu is really punctual. As soon as his voice fell, there was a sound of fighting at the door, but it soon disappeared. Then, the door was kicked open from the outside, and a black shadow appeared at the door. The black shadow's footsteps were very steady as he walked into the hall step by step. As the lights gradually brightened, everyone could see that he was a young man in his 20s. He wasn't too tall, but he looked very strong and his whole body was emitting a murderous aura. Long Haixing looked serious. Anyway, there were dozens of guards in the royal nightclub. He didn't expect that they would be killed so quickly. Li Hu's strength was beyond his imagination. Walking to the center of the hall, Li Hu stopped. Although he was alone, his momentum was not weak at all. He glanced at Ye Kai and others and said, "Is Long Haisheng here?" "I am." Long Haisheng stood up. Although he was not a warrior, as an underworld tycoon, he had an unconcealable momentum. "Yes, I didn't expect you to come." Li Hu glanced at Long Haisheng and said arrogantly, "Have you thought about it? Do you agree to Li Ao's conditions?" Long Haisheng said, "There is nothing to say. As long as I, Long Haisheng, am here, drugs are not allowed to enter Jiangnan City." "Good, you are tough." Li Hu smiled coldly and said, "Originally, I wanted to tear down your bases one by one. Now, it seems that there's no need to go through so much trouble. I'll directly break your bones. Let's see how long you can stay tough." Long Haisheng said, "Li Hu, don't think that you can do whatever you want because your cultivation has reached the level of internal strength. There are many masters who are better than you." Li Hu sneered and said, "I didn't expect you to know about internal strength. It seems that you have invited a master. Then call your master out. Today, I will make you convinced." At this time, Ye Kai slapped the table and shouted in a deep voice, "Li Hu, with the people of my Rongwei Martial Arts Club here, it's not your turn to be arrogant." Li Hu glanced at him arrogantly and said, "Rongwei Martial Arts Club is nothing. If you annoy me, I will tear down your martial arts club later." "What an arrogant boy." Ye Kai said to Zhou Wen, "Go and see how strong he is. How dare he not take our Rongwei Martial Arts Club seriously?" "Don't worry, master. I will definitely beat this boy to the ground." As Zhou Wen spoke, he stood up and strode in front of Li Hu. Ye Kai said to Long Haisheng, "Zhou Wen is my eldest disciple. He began to practice martial arts with me when he was 5 years old. A year ago, he entered the threshold of internal strength. He is absolutely the best among the young warriors. It is not a problem to beat Li Hu." Qin Haodong shook his head secretly. He had seen clearly the moment Li Hu appeared. This guy's cultivation had reached the 7th level of covert power, which was 2 levels higher than Ye Kai. Not to mention his 2 disciples. In this case, Zhou Wen would definitely be defeated. However, he did not say anything to stop them. Since this master and disciple were arrogant, then let them pay for their arrogance. In other words, even if he said something to stop them now, they would not listen. There was no need to find trouble. In the field, Zhou Wen made a starting gesture and said to Li Hu, "Make your move. Let me see how strong you are." Li Hu stood with his hands behind his back and glanced at him disdainfully. "Boy, if I am not mistaken, you have just reached the level of internal strength. How dare you provoke me with such a cultivation? You are simply courting death. Boy, you are courting death." Growing up with Ye Kai, Zhou Wen had also developed a supercilious and arrogant character. At this time, how could he stand Li Hu's contempt? After a roar, he suddenly kicked at Li Hu's face. Li Hu sneered and also kicked. The 2 men separated as soon as they touched. It was obvious who was superior. Zhou Wen, who had been filled with confidence a moment ago, was now like a kite with a broken string. He flew backward and slammed into a stone pillar in the lobby, producing a dull thud that seemed to shake the entire nightclub. Zhou Wen fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, this was a nightclub and the stone pillars were all wrapped in soft packaging. Otherwise, he would have broken his bones. Zhou Wen. Ye Kai's expression changed as soon as Li Hu attacked. He quickly ran over to help Zhou Wen up. At this moment, there was a huge footprint on Zhou Wen's chest. As soon as he sat up, he spat out another mouthful of blood. At this time, Zhou Wu had already rushed to Li Hu. "Zhou Wu, come back quickly. You are no match for him." When Ye Kai shouted, it was too late. Zhou Wu's body flew out again and hit the stone pillar that Zhou Wen had just hit. He fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. What was different from Zhou Wen was that there was a huge palm print on Zhou Wu's chest. It was the iron palm. Li Hu took 2 steps forward and said to Ye Kai coldly, "Your 2 apprentices are too weak. They are not even enough for me to warm up. Now it is your turn." Ye Kai's heart trembled and his face lost the initial arrogance. Although his 2 apprentices were a little weak, they were still masters of internal strength. He did not expect that they would be so vulnerable in front of Li Hu. Of course, at this point, he had no way out. He could only brace himself and fight. Under everyone's gaze, Ye Kai slowly stood up and walked to Li Hu. He cupped his fists and said, "I am Ye Kai from Jiangnan Rongwei Martial Arts Club. May I ask who your master is?" Right now, he was very anxious to know where Li Hu's master was. Li Hu had such a high cultivation at such a young age. It would be fine if he was alone, but if he provoked a powerful force, the gains would not make up for the losses. Li Hu smiled and said, "Do you want to have a relationship with me? Don't waste your time. I came back from overseas. Now I will give you 2 choices. Either get out of here or come here to die." No matter what, Ye Kai was the owner of Rongwei Martial Arts Club, one of the top figures in Jiangnan martial arts. At this time, his face had been trampled on. How could he suppress his anger? He said angrily, "Boy, you're too arrogant. Whether I am arrogant or not, we will see." Li Hu said as he struck first and punched Ye Kai in the face. Ye Kai did not show weakness and met it with his palm. The 2 of them clashed against each other and exchanged 7 or 8 blows. The bystanders only saw 2 black shadows entangled with each other. Every punch and kick brought about a strong gust of wind. Wherever they hit, the tables and chairs were shattered into pieces. Is this the power of a warrior with internal strength? Long Haisheng was secretly shocked. Although he used to be the underground leader, Qin Haodong was the one with the highest cultivation he had seen. At that time, Qin Haodong had not yet entered the threshold of covert power and had not exerted his full strength. This time, Li Hu came to make trouble, which also taught him a lesson. In the future, no matter how much money he spent, he must find some masters at the level of covert power. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to gain a foothold in Jianghu. As he thought, he stared at the 2 men in the field, praying that Ye Kai could defeat Li Hu, or at least not fail. Otherwise, he did not know how to survive tonight. It turned out that prayer did not work. Strength trumped everything. With a muffled bang, the 2 men in the field separated. Li Hu stood in the field like a nail with amazing momentum, while Ye Kai stepped back 7 or 8 steps in succession. His face was pale, and there was blood on the corner of his mouth. His body swayed and he almost fell to the ground. Led by Long Haisheng, all the people in the nightclub felt their hearts sink. Ye Kai was defeated after all. At the same time, they also had a deep fear of Li Hu. Ye Kai was one of the top masters in Jiangnan province. They did not expect that he would be defeated so easily. It showed how terrible this man's cultivation was. Long Haisheng sighed. After all, he had underestimated Li Hu. He thought that he could win by inviting Ye Kai and his apprentice. He did not expect that he would be defeated so easily. Although he did not understand martial arts, he could see that Ye Kai was not at the same level as Li Hu. It seemed that today's matter would not end well. Ye Kai wiped the blood on the corner of his mouth and said disappointedly, "I lost. I did not expect that you have reached the 7th level of covert power at such a young age. I underestimated the heroes in the world." Li Hu was calm and composed. It was obvious that he didn't consume too much of his strength just now. He proudly said, "My master has roamed the seas for many years and is a famous martial arts grandmaster. Although I'm the most useless disciple under my master, I'm not someone you can compare to." Although he was said to be useless, Ye Kai did not dare to lose his temper at all. He said with amazement, "It turns out that you are a disciple of a grandmaster. No wonder you have such a cultivation. It is not an injustice for me to lose. You know what's good for you. Get out of here. I am looking for Long Haixing today." After winning 3 games in a row, Li Hu's face became more and more arrogant. He strode toward Long Haixing. Seeing that Yi Kai and his apprentice could not be counted on, Long Haixing waved his hand behind him. 2 gunmen quickly took out their guns and pointed at Li Hu. Chapter 362. Long Haixing turned his head and saw that there was a flying knife in each gunman's wrist. The end of the flying knife reached the handle, and the tip of the knife came out from the other side of the wrist. Li Hu looked around sharply and said in a cold voice, "If you don't want to die, behave yourself." After saying that, he walked to Long Haixing again. Several bodyguards around Long Haixing rushed up fearlessly. However, courage did not represent strength. Soon these people were all knocked down by Li Hu with a few punches and kicks. He said proudly, "Long Haixing, what else do you have to say now?" Yi Kai sighed. Although he could still stand up and was much stronger than his 2 apprentices, he had lost the ability to fight after all. Even at his peak, he was not Li Hu's opponent. He couldn't help but sigh that he had lost the whole game because of a wrong move. He didn't expect Li Hu's cultivation to be so high. As a gangster, although he knew that the general situation was lost, Long Haixing did not panic too much. He said lightly, "I admit defeat today. You can do whatever you want to me, but I hope you can let my men go." Li Hu said, "Long Haixing, I have already said that there are only 2 ways for you today. Either accept Lord Ao's proposal or die. Of course, none of your men will live. I also said that as long as I am alive, I will never let drugs into the south of the Yangtze River." Long Haixing sighed and said, "My men live on the edge of a knife with me, but my brother is just a doctor, not a gangster. I hope you can let him go." Li Hu followed Long Haixing's eyes and saw a young man sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed, leisurely tasting the tea in the cup, as if he did not see what was happening in front of him. He just focused on Yi Kai and his apprentices and the 2 gunmen. He did not pay attention to Qin Haodong at all. Now it seemed that this guy was so calm after seeing his means. Either he had something to rely on, or he was crazy. Li Hu had been overseas for many years. Although he was cruel, he had always been careful. When he found Qin Haodong's abnormality, he immediately observed carefully. After a moment, he shook his head. It seemed that he had been overthinking. This brat did not have the slightest aura of a martial artist, nor did he make him feel threatened at all. He was completely an ordinary person. It seemed that there was something wrong with his head. Turning back, he said to Long Haixing again, "I always keep my word. I said that everyone here must die, so no one can live." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard Qin Haodong say leisurely, "Boy, does your mother know that you are so arrogant? You can do whatever you want overseas, but you can easily be beaten to death in China." Yi Kai glanced at Qin Haodong and thought to himself, "This young man is good looking, but why is he retarded?" They still dared to anger Li Hu at a time like this. Wasn't that courting death? Didn't he see how terrifying this guy was? Sure enough, Li Hu burst into laughter. Then he looked at Qin Haodong with a murderous look and said, "Boy, you're so arrogant. You're the first person who dares to say that I, Li Hu, have been killed." Qin Haodong still sat leisurely on the sofa and said lightly, "You're just at the 7th level of covert power. Your cultivation is not high, but you're also arrogant. If your master stood in front of me, he might be able to fight with me. You're too far behind." Being looked down upon one after another, Li Hu's anger rose. His murderous intent surged. He looked at Qin Haodong fiercely and said, "It seems that my means are still too gentle. Do you know what people overseas call me? They call me Blood Tiger, because every time I make a move, blood will flow like a river. Today's killing will start with you." After that, he leaped into the air and rushed toward Qin Haodong with a murderous look. Everyone began to feel sorry for Qin Haodong. Everyone had seen Li Hu's means just now. His cultivation was so high and he was so ruthless that even Ye Kai and his disciple, who were famous in Jiangnan City, were beaten to a pulp. There was no possibility of survival under his full strength. Long Haisheng even closed his eyes, his heart full of guilt. In his opinion, he was the one who hurt Qin Haodong. If he had known this, he would not have brought Qin Haodong here. But at this moment, Qin Haodong gently raised his wrist and a purple light shot toward Li Hu's chest. The speed of the purple light was so fast that Li Hu had no time to react. He felt as if his chest had been hit by a cannonball. His body, which had been moving forward rapidly, was abruptly turned back and flew backward 7 or 8 meters. With a bang, he hit a pillar and then slid to the ground. He struggled to get up from the ground, but he felt a sharp pain in his chest. Then, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked down and saw a purple clay teapot lid embedded in his chest. The teapot lid, which had no edges and corners, had broken his sternum and sunk deep into it. No wonder his internal organs were injured, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was a real warrior at the 7th level of covert power, and there were signs of breaking through to the 8th level. But he was beaten back by a teapot lid. It showed how strong the opponent's internal strength was. He was at least a half step to the supreme power realm expert. Thinking of this, Li Hu broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't expect that Long Haisheng was hiding such a great master. It was extremely insidious. If he had known this, he wouldn't have dared to come here alone to make trouble. When Long Haisheng heard the noise and turned around, he saw Qin Haodong still sitting there leisurely drinking tea, while Li Hu was lying on the ground and spitting out a mouthful of blood. For a moment, he didn't understand what was going on. He couldn't help but look at Ye Kai. At this time, Ye Kai stood there like a wooden sculpture with his mouth wide open. He never expected that the little doctor, who had never taken seriously, could beat the fierce Li Hu so easily that he spat out a mouthful of blood. He had just learned how powerful Li Hu was. He was a real master at the 7th level of covert power. But Qin Haodong could defeat Li Hu easily. What kind of cultivation was this? A supreme power or a half-step supreme power? No matter which one it was enough to shock people. This young man looked only about 20 years old. How could he have such a high cultivation? It should be known that the higher the level of martial arts cultivation, the more difficult it was. Even a half-step supreme power under the age of 30 was a rare genius in 100 years. He was definitely the target of all sections. It was ridiculous that he had just pretended to be powerful in front of others, showing off how powerful a master of covert power was. It was like playing with a big knife in front of Guan Yu. It was completely humiliating. What a coward. Li Hu didn't have time to think so much. He struggled to get up from the ground, turned around and ran to the door. Of course, he had to run. Even Li Hu couldn't kill Long Haisheng with a half-step supreme power master here. And it was incredible that the man in front of him had reached the realm of half-step supreme power at such a young age. It was said that with his master's talent, he only reached the realm of half-step supreme power at the age of 25 and entered the ranks of supreme power at the age of 30. Now he was an overlord overseas. This news must be spread overseas as soon as possible. There was such a genius in the domestic martial arts world. Perhaps the master's plan to return to Huaxia had to be replanned. Li Hu thought so, but his body was getting faster and faster. At this time, he heard Qin Haodong sneer, "Didn't you just say you wanted to kill everyone? It's too late to run now." As he spoke, he raised his hand and a cold light ejected from his palm. Before Li Hu could run a few steps, the 1,000 blades shot through his right knee and nailed him to the ground. Qin Haodong seemed to have done a trivial thing. He slowly drank up the tea in the cup, then stood up and walked to Li Hu. He raised his hand and pulled out the 1,000 blades. Then he wiped the blood on Li Hu's body and asked, "Tell me, who sent you here? What is your purpose in coming to Jiangnan?" Although the 1,000 blades had been pulled out, Qin Haodong was standing in front of him. Li Hu didn't dare to run away. He thought for a moment and said, "Little brother, although your cultivation is very high, listen to me. There are some people you can't afford to offend." He originally wanted to scare Qin Haodong by saying his master's name. But before he finished speaking, Qin Haodong turned his wrist and the 1,000 blades was inserted into his left leg again. "I asked you to answer my question," Qin Haodong said coldly. "It's Li Ao from Jiangbei. He asked me to come here and force Long Haisheng to open the drug market in Jiangnan." The severe pain made Li Hu's head drip with cold sweat. He didn't dare to say anything else and answered Qin Haodong's question honestly. "Do you think I will believe it? Would an expert of your level listen to a mafia boss?" Li Hu was afraid that Qin Haodong would attack him again, so he quickly explained, "Because I have a family relationship with Li Ao, I agreed to help him. And after it is done, he will give me 50 million as a reward." Qin Haodong nodded and asked again, "You just said that you are from overseas. Where is that?" Li Hu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, he asked about his master's name. As long as he said his master's name, the young man would give him some face. "I am from the overseas Qin gang. My master is a Wu Dao Grand Master, Invincible Vajra Zhan Wudi." "What? Your master is Zhan Wudi?" Yi Kai, who was next to him, suddenly turned pale with fright. A smug look appeared on Li Hu's face as he said, "My master is the Invincible Vajra Zhan Wudi. Now you can let me go." In his opinion, with his master's name, as long as one was a martial artist, they would give him some face. No one would dare to kill him. In fact, he was completely using his master's name to intimidate others. The real master of Zhan Wudi was his brother, Li Long. He just relied on his relationship with Li Long to become a nominal disciple. But even so, it was enough for him to dominate the world with the name of Zhan Wudi. Even if someone had a higher cultivation than him, no one dared to provoke him for the sake of his master. The young man in front of him must be the same. Unexpectedly, Qin Haodong turned to look at Yi Kai and asked, "Who is Zhan Wudi? What does he do?" Puff. Li Hu spat blood again. After so many years in Jianghu, it was the first time that someone had not heard of the name Zhan Wudi. Yi Kai obviously felt that his IQ was not enough today. He looked at Qin Haodong in confusion and said, "Senior, have you really not heard of the title of Invincible Vajra?" Although Qin Haodong was obviously much younger than him and even younger than his two disciples, Qin Haodong's cultivation was high. It was very likely that he was a disciple of a big sect who came out to gain experience, so he directly lowered his status and called Qin Haodong senior. "No, is he very famous?" Qin Haodong said in surprise. Originally, Yi Kai thought that Qin Haodong pretended not to have heard of Zhan Wudi in order to suppress Li Hu's prestige, but his expression did not seem to be pretending at all. He really didn't know. He could never imagine that a master who was half a step to the supreme power realm would not know who Zhan Wudi was. After confirming this idea, Yi Kai said with a wry smile, "Zhan Wudi, as his name suggests, is a martial arts addict." At the age of 25, he became a half-step to the supreme power realm. At the age of 30, he officially became a supreme power. At the age of 40, he created the title of Invincible Vajra. Now no one knows how high his cultivation has reached, but he is definitely a generation of experts that people look up to. Chapter 363. After hearing Yi Kai's words, Li Hu straightened his chest and said proudly, "Since you know my master's name, you should let me go now, right?" "Let you go? You think too much." Qin Haodong said coldly, "Do you know how many families have been ruined by drugs? Do you know how many families have been torn apart by drugs? Li Ao's drug trafficking has harmed the people. As a martial artist, you disregarded right and wrong and helped him commit crimes. You destroyed 2 of Big Brother Long's venues and injured so many people. Just based on this, you will die today." Li Hu's expression changed and he cried, How dare you? Don't forget that my master is Zhang Wudi. If you dare to hurt me, the Qin gang will never spare you. Qin Haodong sneered and said, you've committed such a sin and you still don't repent. Even the Jade Emperor can't save you, let alone your master. As he spoke, the 1,000 blades in his hand flashed and this time it directly pierced Li Hu's throat. Ye Kai didn't expect that Qin Haodong would kill Li Hu without hesitation. He was so frightened that it took him a long time to say in a trembling voice, Senior, did you really kill him? Qin Haodong pulled out the 1,000 blades and said, what's the point of keeping him alive if I don't kill him? But his master is Zhang Wudi. If you kill him, the consequences will be unimaginable, he's just a supreme power. It's no big deal. Qin Haodong turned to Long Haixing and said, Brother Long, spread the news that I killed Li Hu. Long Haixing said, how can I do that? Brother Qin is helping me, so if anything happens, I, Long, will take full responsibility. Qin Haodong shook his head and said, Brother Long, this is a matter between us warriors. You can't take responsibility even if you want to. Even if you say that you killed Li Hu, no one will believe it. Just do as I say. Long Haixing said, but what if Li Hu's master comes? Qin Haodong said, don't worry about it, Brother Long. I have a way to deal with it. He did not take Zhang Wudi too seriously. A supreme power warrior was not a big deal in Emperor Greenwood's eyes. Although his cultivation was not high enough, he could kill a supreme power with the help of the formation if he made enough preparations in advance. At this time, Ye Kai recovered from the shock. He thought for a moment and said, Mr. Long, you don't have to worry too much. Zhang Wudi has been living abroad for 10 years. He won't set foot in Huaxia easily. Qin Haodong glanced at him and asked, why? Is there a reason for this? Ye Kai said, Senior, have you really never heard of Zhang Wudi? Never heard of it. Qin Haodong shook his head. In the past 5 years, he had been in the cultivation world, so he didn't know anything about the earth. 5 years ago, he was just a college student who was busy working and studying, so he didn't know anything about warriors. As the boss of the underworld, Long Haixing didn't know anything about Wulin. He was also very interested in Zhang Wudi and said, Master Yi, tell me the story of Zhang Wudi. We have to start from 10 years ago. Ye Kai revealed a look of nostalgia and began to tell his story. As a rare martial arts genius, Zhang Wudi entered the ranks of Wu Dao Grand Masters at the age of 30. At the age of 40, he began to challenge all the masters in the world. As long as their cultivation reached the supreme power realm, he would challenge them. He vowed to become the #1 martial artist in Huaxia. If it was just a challenge, it would be fine. However, Zhang Wudi was ruthless. Anyone who was defeated by him would either die or be disabled. In less than a month, he killed 18 Supreme Power Realm martial artists in Huaxia. Not only did he create the title of Invincible Vajra, but he also made the whole martial arts world bloody. All the strong people were in danger. Qin Haodong said, he was really crazy. What was Zhang Wudi's cultivation at that time? Ye Kai shook his head and said, this has always been a secret in the martial arts world. No one knows how high Zhang Wudi's cultivation has reached. Among the 18 Supreme Power Masters he challenged, the highest cultivation had reached the 7th level of the Supreme Power Realm, but they still couldn't withstand 10 moves from him. This is also the reason why other strong people are frightened, because no one knows how powerful Zhang Wudi is. Long Haixing asked, what happened later? How did he end up overseas? Ye Kai said, times make heroes. Just when the whole martial arts world was in a panic, another peerless strong master Hao Yu appeared. He and Zhang Wudi had a fight at Dongting Lake. This battle shocked the whole martial arts world. Countless people went to Dongting Lake to watch the battle. The two great grandmaster experts fought for an entire day and night. I was fortunate enough to see the fight. It was a fight that made the sky dim and the earth dark, the sun and the moon dim. Long Haixing couldn't help asking, what happened in the end? Who won? Of course it was Master Hao Yu. Yi Kai said with reverence. Although Zhang Wudi was a strong man, in the end, Master Hao Yu was more skilled. He defeated Zhang Wudi with one palm. At the same time, he forced Zhang Wudi to make a heavy oath that as long as Master Hao Yu was in Huaxia, he would never set foot in Huaxia. From that day on, Zhang Wudi left Huaxia and lived overseas. Later, I heard that he joined the Qin gang and became the first elder of the Qin gang. Speaking of this, he couldn't help sighing. Fortunately, there was a strange person like Master Hao Yu. Otherwise, the martial arts world of Huaxia would have been slaughtered by Zhang Wudi. Qin Haodong asked, "Who is Master Hao Yu?" Yi Kai said, "The origin of Master Hao Yu is also a mystery in the martial arts world. He was unknown before Zhang Wudi. No one had heard of his name at all. No one knew his master or where he came from. But he became famous after that battle and became the recognized number one in Huaxia in the martial arts world. After that battle, Master Hao Yu disappeared again. It has been 10 years since then. Few people have seen him again, but his title as the number one in the martial arts world has never changed. There is a saying in the martial arts world that whoever wants to be the number one in the world is not qualified to challenge Master Hao Yu unless he goes overseas and defeats Zhang Wudi. But Zhang Wudi has been overseas for many years. It is said that his cultivation has reached an incredible level. Some people say that he has reached the 9th level of the Supreme Power Realm, and some even say that he has reached the legendary saint. Whether the legend is true or not, in short, it is a blessing that this evil star does not return to Huaxia. No one dares to provoke him. Qin Haodong nodded. He had learned something about the martial arts world from Yi Kai. It was a worthwhile trip. Although there were many masters in his daddy's security company, and there were more than a dozen of them who had reached the level of covert power, these people were all cultivated by him. They were also not authentic martial artists, and they knew very little about the secrets of Wulin. Hearing that Zhang Wudi could not return to Huaxia, Long Haixing calmed down a lot. At least he didn't have to worry about Qin Haodong's safety. He ordered his men to dispose of Li Hu's body. Today's matter was over. Yi Kai took out the check from his pocket and handed it to Long Haixing. He said to Long Haixing with a guilty face, "Mr. Long, we are not good at martial arts and almost ruined your business. I'm really ashamed. I'll return the money in full. According to what Senior Qin said before, I will give you 10 million yuan as compensation for your loss. But we don't have that much cash. I will transfer the money to your account later." Long Haixing said, "Both of you are seriously injured. Forget the compensation. My brother was just joking." This, Yi Kai looked at Qin Haodong awkwardly. Qin Haodong said, "Forget about the 10 million yuan. Remember to avoid arrogance and rashness in the future. There is always someone better than you. It's not good for you to be too proud." "Senior, you're right," Yi Kai said and bowed deeply to Qin Haodong. "I didn't know you were a master just now. Please forgive me for offending you. Let bygones be bygones." Qin Haodong reached out and gently lifted Yi Kai up with an invisible genuine qi. He had just learned a lot of martial arts secrets from Yi Kai, and now he had a much better impression of him. "Take off your clothes. I'll treat your injury." Yi Kai was slightly stunned at first, and then he said in surprise, "Thank you, Senior." His internal organs had just been injured by Li Hu, and the injury was very serious. He was afraid that he would have to rest for a year and a half to recover. At this time, when he heard that Qin Haodong could help, he was immediately overjoyed. Although he didn't know that Qin Haodong was the legendary medical sage, with his cultivation of half-step supreme power realm, his medical skills would not be bad. Soon, he took off his shirt and sat cross-legged on the ground. Qin Haodong raised his hand and slapped him in the back. Yi Kai spat out a big mouthful of blood. But this time, it was black blood mixed with some blood clots. It was the extravasated blood caused by the internal injuries. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Yi Kai suddenly felt a lot more comfortable in his chest, and the pain just now had disappeared. Qin Haodong gave him another healing elixir and said, "Go back and rest for 7 days, and you'll recover." "Thank you, Senior," Ye Kai said and bowed to Qin Haodong again. If he had bowed before because he was afraid of Qin Haodong's cultivation of half-step supreme power realm, now he was sincere and completely convinced by Qin Haodong's cultivation and demeanor. Qin Haodong nodded slightly, pointed to Zhou Wen and Zhou Wu next to him and said, "Bring them here, I'll treat them together." "Thank you, Senior." Ye Kai was overjoyed and quickly carried his 2 disciples over. Zhou Wen and Zhou Wu's injuries were much more serious than Ye Kai's. Qin Haodong first gave them healing elixirs, and then he gave them acupuncture. Half an hour later, the 2 men, who had been dying, stood up from the ground again. Although they were still a little tired, they were much better than before. The 2 men knelt in front of Qin Haodong and said guiltily, "Senior Qin, we were blind. We offended you just now. Please punish us. Forget it, go back. Don't be arrogant and impatient in the future. Practice martial arts well. I should go back to sleep." Qin Haodong said goodbye to Long Haisheng and then turned to leave the royal nightclub. Ye Kai, Zhou Wen and Zhou Wu bowed deeply to his back at the same time. They didn't stand up until Qin Haodong's figure completely disappeared from their sight. Qin Haodong drove to the Lin's villa. It was almost midnight, and there were few pedestrians on the road. Occasionally, he could see some couples kissing under the street lamps. Suddenly, he saw a girl running in front of him, and a man chasing her closely. Qin Haodong's face changed. The girl was his sister, Wang Rubing. Although he didn't know how Wang Rubing came here in the middle of the night, the person chasing her at this time must not be a good person. Thinking of this, he stepped on the brake and stopped by the side of the road. He quickly came behind the man and lifted his leg to kick him to the ground. The man was trying to chase Wang Rubing, and he was not prepared at all. After being kicked, his head was broken and bleeding, and he screamed. Chapter 364. Hearing the shout, Wang Rubing suddenly turned around and saw Qin Haodong raising his leg to kick the man again. She hurriedly cried, "Haodong, stop." Qin Haodong was now completely at ease. Hearing Wang Rubing's shout, he immediately withdrew his right leg, turned back and said, "Sister, are you going to teach this hooligan a lesson yourself? Go ahead. If he dares to resist, I'll destroy him immediately. Get out of the way. You're the hooligan." Wang Rubing pushed Qin Haodong away, helped the man on the ground up and said, "How are you? Are you all right?" Qin Haodong was a little confused and said in surprise, "Sister, did you take the wrong medicine? He's a hooligan. Why are you so polite to him? You're the hooligan." The man got up from the ground. His face was swollen and his head was bleeding. He looked very embarrassed. However, Qin Haodong could still recognize that this man was Zhang Hao, who had pursued Wang Rubing some time ago. Today, Zhang Hao was very different from before. In a white t-shirt and blue jeans, he was a sunny big boy. The aura of a rich young master in the past was gone. But now his white t-shirt was covered with dust, and there were 2 big holes in his jeans. He looked like a beggar's pants. He wiped the blood on his forehead and said angrily, "Qin Haodong, you're too cruel. You almost disfigured me. How could it be you? Why are you chasing my sister in the middle of the night?" Qin Haodong also felt that something was wrong. He turned to look at Wang Rubing and asked, "Sister, what the hell is going on?" Wang Rubing, who was straightforward and fierce, was rarely embarrassed. She blushed and stammered, unable to speak clearly. Finally, Zhang Hao said, "Let me tell you. I'm in love with your sister. We just came out of the cinema after watching a movie tonight." "You're in love? So soon?" It was Qin Haodong's turn to open his mouth in surprise. A few days ago, Wang Rubing hated Zhang Hao very much. He didn't expect that they would be together so soon. Zhang Hao took the tissue from Wang Rubing, wiped the blood and mud on his forehead, and said excitedly, "I have to thank you for this. Last time, you told me that if I wanted to pursue Rubing, I had to show sincerity. Not all girls like money. After returning home, I changed myself. I stopped relying on my family's wealth and turned myself into an ordinary person. I pursued Rubing with sincerity and she agreed." Holy sh*t. Qin Haodong just said it casually that day, and he even forgot what he had said. He didn't expect that Zhang Hao, the fool, would actually do as he said and magically succeed. However, it could also be seen that Zhang Hao had a good nature and was sincere to Wang Rubing. It was a good choice for them to be together. Zhang Hao said proudly, "For the sake of your help, I'll forgive you for kicking me." Qin Haodong came to his senses and asked again, "Even if you've won my sister's heart, what are you playing at night? Hadn't he already gotten her? Why did she run in front of you while you chased her?" Zhang Hao said with a sad face, "That's because I just came out of the cinema. Rubing said that if I could catch up with her, she would let me kiss her. I didn't expect that I would be beaten by you before I ran a few steps." Speaking of this, he turned back and grabbed Wang Rubing's arm. "Now that I've caught you, you can't deny it." Holy sh*t. How could he do this? Qin Haodong didn't expect that he had made such a big mistake unintentionally. Wang Rubing rolled her eyes at him and said reproachfully, "It's all your fault. Otherwise, how could he have caught me?" Qin Haodong looked innocent. He pointed at Wang Rubing and said, "Sister, you're wearing high heels and a miniskirt. How can you outrun him? Since you've agreed, just let him kiss you. Why are you playing this stupid game? You're running in front of a man in the middle of the night. Anyone who sees it will think that you're a hooligan. Can you blame me for that? What do you know? This is called romance." Zhang Hao took Wang Rubing's hand and said proudly, "Shut up." Wang Rubing roared like a lion, which scared Zhang Hao and made him shut his mouth quickly. She looked at Qin Haodong and said, "Don't talk about me. Why did you come out at night instead of sleeping?" Qin Haodong said, "How can you blame me? The road doesn't belong to your house. Can't I come out?" "Forget it, it's late. I'll send you back and then treat this brother-in-law. Don't ruin his face. If Aunt doesn't agree, you'll fight with me." "Nonsense. Who are you calling brother-in-law? We're just ordinary friends now," Wang Rubing said coquettishly. "When did you become so open-minded? Ordinary friends can even catch up and kiss you? It'll be terrible if the news gets out." Qin Haodong, shut up, or I'll tell Grandma that you have several girlfriends. "Don't, I give up. You're just ordinary friends, the most ordinary." While talking, Qin Haodong let them get in the car and then sent them home. He helped Zhang Hao deal with his injury and then returned to Lin's villa. The next morning, everything was back on track. He and Lin Momo sent the little fellow to kindergarten and then went back to Tang Men Company to work together. Soon after he arrived at the company, his cell phone rang. It was Nailan Wuxia. "Haodong, come to our crime squad quickly. We need your help with a case." Qin Haodong said with a smile, "It's just a beggar. Do I need to do it myself?" Nailan Wuxia said seriously, "It's not that case. We've already dealt with the beggar's case. It's another murder case. Well, I'll go now." After hanging up the phone, Qin Haodong briefly told Lin Momo about the situation. Lin Momo said, "You're busy all day. Are you a policeman or a doctor?" "I'm capable." Qin Haodong said with a smile, "Haven't you heard? With great ability comes great responsibility. We have to do what needs to be done and help what needs to be done." After that, he left Tang Men Company and drove directly to the crime squad of Jiangnan City. Walking into the conference room, he saw Wang Jianfeng, who had been promoted to deputy director, sitting in the middle. Next to him was Nailan Wuxia and 7 or 8 backbones of the crime squad. Even Wang Jianfeng attended the meeting in person, which showed that it was a big case. Seeing Qin Haodong enter the door, Wang Jianfeng quickly stood up and warmly invited him to sit next to him. Dr. Qin, I'm sorry to trouble you again, but in order to solve the case quickly, I can only ask for your help. Qin Haodong smiled and said, It's okay, Director Wang. It's my duty to help. Tell me, who do you want me to interrogate? In the past, he had helped the Public Security Bureau several times and was responsible for interrogation. This time, he took it for granted that he wanted to use his mind manipulating to interrogate. Dr. Qin, I'm not asking for your help this time. Wang Jianfeng said with a wry smile, to be honest, there have been several murder cases in succession, but so far we haven't even determined the direction of the suspect. There is no target for interrogation at all. Qin Haodong said in amazement, Well, what can I do to help? When it comes to solving cases, I'm not as good as everyone here. Wang Jianfeng said, Everyone knows that Dr. Qin is the medical sage, who has inherited ancient Chinese medicine and is proficient in medicine, martial arts, and magic. Considering that you may be needed in this case, I invited you here. Qin Haodong said, Well, what do you need me to do? Director Wang, just tell me. Thank you for your help, Dr. Qin. After Wang Jianfeng finished speaking, he turned to Nalan Wuxia and said, Captain Nalan, let's start our case analysis meeting. Nalan Wuxia said, 6 days ago, there was a murder in the jurisdiction of the East City branch. Because there was only one case at that time, it was put under the jurisdiction of the East City branch. 3 days ago, there was another murder in the West City branch. Because the connection between the two cases could not be determined at that time, it was put under the jurisdiction of the West City branch. But just last night, there was another murder in the South City branch. In less than a week, there were 3 murders in succession, and there was some connection between these cases, so the Municipal Bureau decided to hand over all of them to the Criminal Police Unit of the Municipal Bureau to investigate. Speaking of this, she opened the notebook in front of her and said, Next, I'll introduce the basic situation of the case. The first case happened in the Yaowang Temple in Jiangnan City. The victim was a 38-year-old male. He was anesthetized and killed. His heart was removed alive, which led to his death. This case was under the jurisdiction of the East City branch. The second case happened on a cruise ship on the river. The victim was a 32-year-old female. She was also anesthetized and killed. Both of her kidneys were removed. This case was under the jurisdiction of the West City branch. The third case happened in the forest park of Jiangnan City. The victim was a 46-year-old male. He was also anesthetized and fainted, and then his liver was removed. This case was under the jurisdiction of the South City branch. After our research, in these 3 cases, the criminal's method of removing the victim's organs was very professional. He should have been professionally trained in medical treatment. It is very likely that it was done by one person, so they agreed to let us file the case for investigation. At this time, a policeman said, Captain Nalan, in recent years, there have been more and more cases of human organ trafficking, and more criminals are engaged in the removal of human organs. Isn't it a little rash to combine the 3 cases with only surgical methods? Nalan Wuxia said, You're right. It's not enough to combine the 3 cases with this alone, but we found this at the scene of the 3 murders. Then she opened a file bag and took out a stack of photos from it. She gave one to each of them. The policeman present took the photos and found a very strange red symbol on them, but no one knew what it was. Captain Nalan, what is this? The policeman who had just spoken asked in confusion. I don't know what it is either. The criminal drew such a strange symbol at the scene of each murder. Because of this, we think that the 3 cases were done by one person or a gang. After that, Nalan Wuxia turned to look at Qin Haodong and said, Haodong, this is why we invited you here. Do you know this symbol? Qin Haodong looked at the photo in his hand and said, If I'm not mistaken, this is the Taoist soul-calming talisman. Nalan Wuxia had originally invited Qin Haodong to come with a tentative attitude. She didn't expect that he really knew this symbol. She asked excitedly, Are you sure? Qin Haodong carefully confirmed it again and said, yes, this is the soul-calming talisman. In ancient times, Taoist priests often used this kind of talisman to suppress the souls of wrongful or violent deaths to prevent these ghosts from harming living beings. That's utter nonsense. A policeman said disdainfully, what era is it now? How can anyone still believe this kind of strange thing? You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.